Chapter 578. Arrogant and Conceited. The old man let out a cold snort and said, "Then I'll let you have a taste of my power first. Otherwise, you really won't know how high the heavens are and how deep the earth is." At the next moment, as the old man formed seals with both hands, he instantly formed over 100 seals. The 4 clan heads opened their mouths, revealing savage expressions as they let out loud roars. It was as if some evil spirits or demons were roaring furiously under the moonlit night. This time, the sound waves seemed to have substance. Layers of transparent ripples that could be seen by the naked eye swept across the entire sky. Even the ground trembled slightly, as if there were 10,000 horses galloping and trampling on the ground. Following that, the 4 figures turned into 4 bolts of lightning, charging toward Feng Xingjian. Roar, 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 roar. For loud roars rang out consecutively as 4 fists punched out simultaneously. In that instant, the air exploded, as if the heavens and earth were collapsing. Feng Xingjian took a step forward and dodged into the sky. However, the ground under his feet was blasted into smithereens by the explosion, forming a huge crater that was 5 to 6 meters deep. At the same time, the 4 clan heads did not stop at all and chased after Feng Xingjian. Violent fist forces whistled to and fro in the sky, trembling as if they wanted to tear a hole in the sky. Streams of strong wind kept on gushing down from the sky. The layers of clouds were pushed aside, revealing the bright moonlight. The violent tornadoes almost turned the entire manor upside down. Countless buildings were turned into ruins. Everyone looked at the sky and saw that Feng Xingjian was like a flash of light, flashing to and fro in the sky. From time to time, he would receive a punch or a kick and then immediately retreat to dodge. It was as if he was being chased away by the powers of the 4 clan heads. It looked as if he was being completely suppressed. However, Feng Xingjian was calm, and he was still thinking, "These 4 corpses are really good materials. I can't waste them." He was afraid that if he were to attack too heavily, the backlash from his body might damage these 4 good materials. That was why he kept retreating. He wanted to find an opportunity to deal with the combat power of the 4 corpses without damaging their quality. However, the others did not know what he was thinking. When the Henry clan's head saw that Feng Xingjian was completely suppressed by him and could not even retaliate, he immediately smiled coldly and released his martial will. "Feng Xingjian, surrender. Although your talent is outstanding, in my great formation, they can absorb the power from ether particles almost endlessly. Both their energy and mental energy are almost limitless. It's impossible for you to win." On the lawn, Bruce revealed a surprised expression. He wanted to stand up, but Lilia stomped him back onto the ground. "What are you doing?" Bruce said angrily. "Can't you see the situation in the sky? Feng Xingjian's power is already gone. Do you still want to resist?" Lilia frowned and sent Bruce rolling on the ground with a kick. She scolded, "Bullsh**T. With Master's abilities, even if that Xiao were to come personally, he would still be dead, let alone these few dead dogs of yours. Watch carefully." Lilia had absolute confidence in Feng Xingjian, but this might not be the case for the others. Bruce smiled coldly as he looked at the battle in the sky. He looked forward to capturing Feng Xingjian alive and trampling him under his feet. Audrey was also looking at Feng Xingjian nervously, worried if Feng Xingjian had really been injured in the earlier exchange with Xia. What if he were to be defeated by the Henry clan's head? The Pop clan's head was also extremely nervous. Feng Xingjian was now their backing. If he were to be defeated by the Henry clan, then things would become even more difficult for them. Although there were many things to say, everyone's thoughts only lasted for less than a second before the battle in the sky changed. Amidst everyone's worried, relieved, or hateful gazes, Feng Xingjian caught the fist of one of the clan heads with one hand. Then with a bang, he pressed down on the wrist of the other clan head. However, at the same time that Feng Xingjian had locked down the 2 clan heads, it also meant that his body was being held down by the 2 clan heads. Therefore, the 2 of them kicked out toward Feng Xingjian's stomach at the same time. Violent powers came pressing down, and the air seemed to have condensed into a material state. Before their physical bodies had even collided, the shock waves from the air collided against the golden armor, producing loud, rumbling sounds. Simultaneously, the remaining two clan heads each punched out toward Feng Xingjian's back. Not only were their attacks condensed with violent powers, but they were also accompanied by endless wind and fire. The fist of one of the clan heads burned intensely with green flames, and the high temperature caused the air to distort. The piercing green light seemed to have turned into a sun, and there were even hints of charred marks appearing on the fist of the clan head. A state of apocalypse and doomsday was mixed in as the fist smashed out. The fist of the other clan head was accompanied by intense whirlwinds. Waves of wind gusted out at a speed of several thousand meters per second, causing each gust of strong wind to cut through the air like blades, capable of slashing through the armor plates of aircraft carriers. There's also a state of the trend of the times, with history surging forward like hurricanes and being irreversible. The two of them made their moves at the same time. The wind fueled the fire, and the fire borrowed the wind power, turning into many green, flaming tornadoes that pressed down fiercely toward Feng Xingjian's back. Together with the attacks from the other two clan heads' punches, it seemed as if they were going to punch a hole through the sky. The even more terrifying thing was that when the two clan heads' fist arts merged together, the state of apocalypse and the trend of history, it was as if they were telling everyone that the end of the world had arrived. It was a trend that could not be reversed or defied, causing people to be unable to muster up any ability to resist. If this attack, which the four of them had joined forces to attack, were to explode on the ground, half of the city would probably disappear completely. The frenzied will of the doomsday would spread out, causing several 100,000 people to lose their will to live, go crazy, or commit suicide. However, when faced with such an attack, there was not a hint of panic in Feng Xingjian's eyes. What he wanted was the instant when the four clan heads fixed their positions at the same time. Just this moment of simultaneous attacks and fixing their positions was sufficient for him to do many things. The instant sword was activated. Graceful sword marks slashed across the bodies of the four clan heads, slashing open the nerves and cerebellum on their bodies. No one could see clearly where this sword attack had come from or when it had ended. By the time the Henry clan's head reacted, many sword marks had already appeared on the bodies of the four people, slashing open countless nerves and cerebellum. In that instant, the four of them lost control of their bodies. It's useless. The Henry clan's head kept on changing his hand seals. Recover. With the four clan heads' physical bodies and the strengthening provided by the formation, their injuries could be healed almost instantly. However, just as they were healing themselves, Feng Xingjian took this opportunity to send out deathly sword intents sweeping out, encompassing the bodies of the four clan heads. Suppress. There seemed to be popping sounds of explosions ringing out in void space, instantly breaking the will that the Henry clan's head had left behind. The four clan heads instantly lost control of their bodies and plunged toward the ground. Chapter 579. Sensing that the four demigods had lost control, the Henry clan's head broke into an expression of disbelief. However, as expected of a sly old fox, his reaction was very fast. Almost at the same time that Feng Xingjian's sword intents engulfed the four demigods, streams of green flames burst out from his body, and he instantly accelerated to several tens of times that of supersonic speed. It was as if doomsday and death were right behind him, and he wanted to escape death's pursuit for a chance of survival. This was the myriad spirit sect's secret killing technique, doomsday evasion. It was a killing technique that stimulated one's entire body's potential with the arrival of doomsday and the pressure of death, instantly unleashing explosive acceleration. Right now, he shot out like a rocket, creating a myriad of thunderous explosions. Within a short few breaths, he had appeared several tens of kilometers away, as if he had teleported. This Feng Xingjian has terrifying abilities. To think that he was able to break through my formation and subdue the four demigods in an instant. How on earth did he do it? Right now, the Henry clan's head was still feeling a lingering fear. This was especially so after Fong Xingjian's final sword attack, which had severed the connection between the four demigods' bodies and then used his deathly sword intents to break through the martial will he had left behind on them. It was truly extremely powerful, and at the thought of losing the four demigods, his heart immediately ached as if it was bleeding. Just as he was thinking about these, he had already flown out over 100 kilometers and then landed on a small hill. However, he had just landed when his countenance changed drastically. He looked at Fong Xingjian as if he had seen a ghost. To think that Fong Xingjian was already standing there, looking at the old man as if he was taking a stroll in the park. What kind of speed and explosive prowess was this? The countenance of the Henry clan's head changed drastically, and he retreated explosively like a startled elephant, instantly knocking over countless trees. However, he had just retreated over 100 meters when he felt his vision turn black, and a sharp aura darted into his head as if it was going to shatter his brain at any moment. Wait a minute. The Henry clan's head suddenly dropped to his knees and said, "I admit defeat. Our Henry clan has been accumulating wealth for over 100 years, and the secret wealth we've hidden away is over 10 million. As long as you spare my life, I'm willing to give all of this to you. From now on, our entire clan will submit to you." If they were in the public eye, the head of the Henry clan might not have knelt down and begged for mercy like this. However, since there was no one in the vicinity, the pressure on him was reduced by a lot. Then, receive a strand of my sword intent. Fong Xingjian tapped out with a finger and pressed it on the head of the Henry clan. A wave of sword intent gushed into the other party's consciousness and lay dormant there. Sensing the sword intent that the other party had sent into his consciousness, the head of the Henry clan sighed and closed his eyes. However, he was a demigod expert after all, and his will and temperament were both top-notch. He quickly accepted his situation and sighed, saying, "Sir, please return the four demigods to me in the future. They are the foundation of our clan, and if they are damaged, the entire clan will probably fall apart and be unable to serve you anymore." Fong Xingjian looked at the Henry clan's head and said, "Are you threatening me? I wouldn't dare. In exchange, I'm willing to offer my clan's 200 years of heritage in the art of arrays." As Fong Xingjian spoke, many pieces of information regarding the principles of arrays were gathered together and transmitted into Fong Xingjian's brain. After a few breaths, Fong Xingjian brought him back to the manor once again. His clothes were in a mess, and his face was covered in dirt. He looked just like a refugee. "Great-grandfather, save me quickly," Bruce cried out. However, at the next moment, when he saw the Henry clan's head covered in dirt, his expression froze up. The head of the Henry clan took a glance at him, closed his eyes, and sighed. After you go to the Great Western region, work hard. You can also train up your character. Hearing this, Bruce felt as if the sky had collapsed, wanting him to waste 10 years in the Great Western region without being able to enjoy himself, cultivate, and clean toilets. This was even worse than killing him. The Pop Clan's head, Ando Fu, let out a breath, and his gaze toward Fong Xingjian became even more submissive. Right now, everyone at the banquet was looking at Fong Xingjian with respect and fear. As long as Fong Xingjian was still around, they would not dare to harbor any enmity toward the Pop Clan. This was the deterrence brought about by pure power. Following that, Fong Xingjian could not be bothered with the handover of the clan's head, the various compensations the Henry clan made, and the various matters of establishing an alliance with the Pop Clan. He brought Audrey and Lilia back to the Great Western region and then sent people over to take over the two clans. As for the four demigod bodies, after the Henry clan's head pleaded repeatedly and was willing to hand over the legacy of a raise and over 10 million in wealth, they were returned to the Henry clan. After all, the Henry clan had accumulated their wealth over the past 100 years, and it was no small matter. Using them to help Fong Xingjian forge a divine weapon was like adding wings to a tiger. It was far more effective than using the four demigod bodies. Fong Xingjian was also very interested in the path of a race. He felt that it could be used to strengthen his sword arts. Moreover, with these 4 demigod remains in the Henry clan's hands, they could also help the Henry clan and the Pop clan to deter their enemies, fending off some of the 8 directional Crimson Dragon's methods of revenge. This would save Fang Xingjian the trouble of having to personally take action for everything. Upon returning to the Great Western region, Fang Xingjian did not care about anything else. He headed straight into the Sacred Land and started his cultivation for the final 10th level of the Mystical Prince. All the materials were sent into the secret room. 10 hours later, densely packed prints were spread out all over Fang Xingjian's body, emitting waves of fluorescent light and giving off an endless sense of antiquity and mystery. Almost at the instant the 10th level of the Mystical Prince was activated, violent information currents gushed into Fang Xingjian's brain like tidal waves. Endless information exploded in Fang Xingjian's mind. Delicacies, travel, love, friendship, sword arts, saber arts, memories, sunset, lessons. All sorts of information that remained in the ether particles gushed forth like waves of chaotic tidal waves. Even with Fang Xingjian's brain's processing abilities, he still felt as if his consciousness had become blurry and his brain had crashed. It was only after 3 hours that Fang Xingjian gradually got used to this feeling. Right now, the entire world before him had become different. Looking over, everything displayed a scene of future development. Fang Xingjian felt as if he could see a future trend. It was also as if the information he received from the ether particles already contained countless possibilities of the future. After studying it for more than 10 minutes, his eyes lit up with joy. So that's how it is. To think that the 10th level of the Mystical Prince already possesses the ability to sense the information of the future possibilities in the ether particles, as well as the ability to sense misfortune and fortune. Chapter 580. Sudden inspiration and sensing fortune and misfortune were abilities that only Tier 4 divine level experts would be able to possess. However, after Fang Xingjian completed the 10th level of the Mystical Prince, he obtained this ability in advance. This ability was not very direct in terms of raising one's battle prowess, but it was of great help to one's overall situation. It could be said that it would be hard for one to encounter ambushes and plots. It was because once one sensed danger, they would just have to change their route. The 10th level of the Mystical Prince has allowed my talent to increase once again, and I can even see some future trends. My control over my physical body has reached an extreme, and it's suitable for me to strive for the brain regeneration realm. At the thought of this, Fang Xingjian sat down cross-legged, preparing to strive for the brain regeneration realm in one go. With the deathly sword intent he had condensed in Demonic City and the will that had surpassed life and death, he could have tried to reach the brain regeneration realm a long time ago. It was just that for safety's sake, he had delayed it until now. Fang Xingjian's heaven's perception continued to scan the state of his brain, constantly monitoring and recording the situation. At the next moment, a gush of sword force swept through his brain's tissues, crushing Fang Xingjian's brain completely and turning it into a lump of meat paste. With a slash of his sword, he had the courage to cross over life and death, treating death as nothing. At this moment, Fang Xingjian felt that he was gradually losing control over his entire physical body. His heart and breathing all started to stop, and his consciousness also started to become blurry due to the disappearance of his brain. Regeneration. The deathly sword intent erupted, allowing his will to regain clarity. Fang Xingjian's brain started to squirm and regenerate. The brain was the place in the human body that was responsible for carrying out thoughts and consciousness. Losing the brain meant that the human body would not be able to think and control its own physical body. This was something that even top-notch demigods could not avoid. However, when a level 29 conferred Knights Martial will reach an extremely strong point, his will would be able to exist for a short period of time, even without his brain. Moreover, he would be able to transmit information through his nerves and recover his physical body through his will. A strong martial will was the prerequisite for reaching the brain regeneration realm. The second requirement was to have unrivaled talent, to be able to remember the state of one's brain's activity at the previous moment, as well as its entire structure. With that, one could then regenerate the brain like how one would regenerate the other parts of the physical body. The slightest mistake would result in irreversible consequences. A lighter case would be the loss of memory, while a more serious case would result in the loss of a part of the brain's function or even turning into an idiot or a vegetable. Feng Xingjian was already satisfied with these 2 points. On one hand, he had condensed the deathly sword intent and had a will that would allow him to exist for a period of time, even if he was brain dead. On the other hand, the 10th level of the mystical prince, in addition to his own talent in sword arts, allowed him to possess extraordinary memory and calculative abilities. Therefore, after his brain was smashed, it immediately began to reorganize. Cells that were hard to see with the naked eye were constantly generated, moving, and reorganizing. At first, it was relatively slow, but later on, it became faster and faster. His entire brain was regenerating and reorganizing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few seconds, his pupils suddenly shrank. The nerves in his brain had been reconnected to his entire body, and he felt a sharp pain. His entire body trembled uncontrollably. The brain recombination was finally a success. With this, Feng Xingjian had finally become a demigod with 4 tiers of perfection in his specialty seeds, body's toughness, physical particles, and brain recombination. Furthermore, with over 10,000 specialty seeds and 1.08 billion physical particles, his abilities far surpassed that of ordinary demigods. He could even go up against a Tier 1 divine level expert a few rounds. Moreover, with the successful recombination of his brain, it meant that he no longer had any weaknesses. Even if his brain were to be damaged in the future, he would be able to recover at any moment and continue fighting. After going through so much hardship, I've finally reached this stage. The past 2 years flashed past Feng Xingjian's mind at lightning speed, causing a hint of emotions to flash in his eyes. At the same time, there was a strong urge in his heart. It was the urge to strive for the divine level. In fact, now that he had reached the unprecedented 4 tiers of perfection, he definitely had the right to strive for the divine level. However, just as Feng Xingjian was thinking of this, a twisted emotion rose in his heart. This is the sudden inspiration ability, the ability to sense fortune and misfortune. Feng Xingjian immediately understood that he had sensed that striving for the divine level now would be very disadvantageous to his future. This was the power of the sudden inspiration ability. One would often be faced with countless choices in life. However, due to a lack of information, one would have no way of knowing which choice was better. However, the sudden inspiration ability could help one have a vague sense, allowing one to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages, making the most correct choice. Therefore, when one reached the 4th tier of the divine level, they would be able to dominate the world, and it would be difficult for them to even die. Right now, Feng Xingjian already possessed such an ability at the 10th level of the mystical prince. Feng Xingjian then wondered if the second prince also possessed such an ability. Was that why the second prince had helped him under the sudden inspiration senses? Since that's the case, I'll train a little more. When all the ether organs are completed and I've reached the 5th tier of perfection, I'll strive for the divine level. Feng Xingjian stood up and twisted his body, releasing explosive sounds that were like steel bars colliding against each other. I've already reached the 4th tier of perfection, and I also have the world-engulfing battle god armor. I should be able to retrieve the Panwu heavenly raiment now, right? At the thought of this, Feng Xingjian felt an intense sense of danger. He even felt a piercing pain in his forehead. Therefore, he closed his eyes, and his entire body exuded an indescribable and ethereal disposition. It was as if it was right before his eyes, yet it also seemed as if it was not in this world. Oh, could it be that someone is ambushing me at the Panwu heavenly raiment? Or is there some danger in the Panwu heavenly raiment itself? Feng Xingjian fell silent for a moment, and then gave up on the idea of retrieving the Panwu heavenly raiment. He sat down and started cultivating. Since there's danger, then I'll just bide my time. I'll continue to integrate the 5 god-slaying swords while creating the ether organs. Fang Xingjian calculated silently. With his current rate of progress, he would need another 4 to 5 months to complete the creation of the ether organs. To ordinary people, this was already ridiculously fast. However, to Fang Xingjian, it was still too slow. As for the integration of the 5 god-slaying swords, he had been working on it ever since he had sat down and sparred with the 4th prince and Prince Philip. His goal was to integrate the 5 swords into one, so that each sword would contain the prowess of each of the 5 god-slaying swords. However, each of the 5 god-slaying swords was a profound martial technique that ordinary people might not be able to fully study even if they spent their entire lives. Even with Fang Xingjian's talent, it was not something that could be done in a single go. This was especially so when he felt that his knowledge of sword arts seemed to be lacking something. This caused his integration process to be a little slow. It was because he would need to open up a path for the integration of many sword techniques and sword moves by himself. However, this slowness was only relative to Fang Xingjian. When he was fighting against Xia's martial will, he had already integrated the sword of infiltrating void and the light pursuit sword ripples into a single sword attack. To others, this might require several decades or even over 100 years of hard work, as well as several generations of improvements. Moreover, the art of formations that he had obtained from the Henry clan was also very interesting. It contained many things that Fang Xingjian had never seen before. Fang Xingjian's intuition told him that if he were to study the art of formations properly and integrate it into his sword techniques, he would be able to form a sword formation and increase the prowess of his killing techniques. Chapter 581. Just like that, he cultivated day and night, occasionally giving Lilia guidance on her sword arts, sparring with Tyrant, or going to the great western city to eat something. At the same time, he condensed his ether organs, learned about formations, and integrated his sword techniques. Unknowingly, another half a month passed by. Fang Xingjian finally integrated the infiltrating void sword and the light pursuit sword ripples, as well as adding in a little sword light from the all-conquering sword. The infiltrating void sword pierced through void space, integrating both offense and defense. The light pursuit sword ripples were extremely fast and impossible to guard against. The all-conquering sword was indestructible, able to slash through even light rays. If he were to be able to integrate these 3 swords into one and perform them in a single move, it would naturally be extremely powerful. Other than this, Fang Xingjian also had a faint comprehension toward the art of formations. He only needed to find an opportunity to test it out and think of a way to integrate it into his sword arts. On this night, just as Fang Xingjian was integrating the 3 great sword moves, he suddenly opened his eyes and shot out a 3-foot-long sword light, looking toward the north of the great western region. A feeling of sudden inspiration rose in his heart, making Fang Xingjian feel that something was strange. It was as if something related to him had happened, but he did not sense any danger. Let's go over and take a look. Knowing that sudden inspiration would not appear for no reason, Fang Xingjian stood up and took a light step forward. With a few flashes, he darted out of the sacred land and soared into the sky, flying toward the north of the great western city. Before Fang Xingjian flew out of the city, in a commoner's village in the north of the great western city, a knight darted toward a small alley with 2 of his subordinates. The knight had a head of thick golden hair and a handsome appearance. However, his expression was as cold as frost as he said, "This is already the 10th person who has gone missing. As they are all commoners, the higher-ups don't pay attention to them. However, I can't ignore this. This time around, I must find traces of this evil cult." Recently, some evil cult influences had suddenly appeared in various places in the Great Western region. In fact, as a world with extraordinary powers, as long as there were second transition experts or even first transition experts who created a bit of a ruckus, it would be a piece of cake for them to create a cult. However, once something like religion went out of control, it would cause great disasters. Thus, the empire had always been actively suppressing all kinds of religions. The sect that has appeared now is called Shan. The handsome knight said, "It's said that it's done by some minor characters in the first transition. Their targets are usually commoners, so the higher-ups don't pay much attention to it. However, I can't ignore it. This time around, it can be said that we're acting on our own. You guys should consider this carefully." Behind him were two knights, one male and one female. Hearing this, their expressions turned serious, and they said, "Captain, we'll listen to you." "All right." Inside the spatial rift, Feng Xinjian frowned slightly. "Shang? Evil cult?" He thought to himself, now that the seventh onslaught is getting closer and closer, the various forces and organizations are constantly expanding their strength. The situation will also become more and more chaotic. Things like sex will indeed have a place to survive. But what I've sensed has come true regarding this Shang. At the same time, in a corner of the commoner's district, in the depths of a dark alley, in the courtyard of a spacious house, several tens of poor people dressed in rags and looking haggard were gathered. They surrounded a bonfire, chanting some kind of ancient and mysterious incantation. Everyone's faces were filled with reverence and fanaticism. Behind the commoners, a man with a tall build and tattoos on his face looked at this scene and nodded, revealing a satisfied expression. Next to him was a short man who said, "It's a pity that after we revive, we'll still have to cultivate all over again. We can only seize the bodies of these commoners, and the recovery of our abilities will be too slow." The man said, "It's all right. Now that the world's metamorphosis has changed, we still have our experience. We'll be able to recover our abilities in 1 to 2 years at most." Thinking of this, hints of fanaticism appeared in his eyes. "With our influence, we've gathered countless strong experts and legendary characters from history. As long as we grow stronger in 1 to 2 years, we'll be able to conquer and unify the entire world. It's impossible for anyone to be a match for us. Moreover, as our abilities continue to grow, our influence will also get stronger and stronger. It won't be long before we'll be able to prepare the bodies of first or even second transition experts for the lords to revive. The speed of our growth will get increasingly faster. It's a pity that true Lord Qingshan, Grand Duke Alba, and the Saint can't be revived," the short man said with a sigh. "The physical bodies needed to sustain their consciousness are far too strong. We'll probably have to find second transition or even demigod experts." Thinking of those few legendary characters, their gazes were filled with admiration. "When true Lord Qingshan revives, we'll instantly become the strongest organization in the world. With his capabilities, overthrowing the Krieg royal family will only take a single word from him." Just as the two of them were talking, the tattooed man suddenly raised his brows. Someone's coming?" With a dash, he arrived under a wall and punched out. It was like the rumble of a cannon, and his fist destroyed the wall, smashing out toward the enemy behind the wall. However, at the same time he punched out, a furious bellow also rang out from the other side of the wall, and the two punched out as well. Bang, 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 bang. Sounds of muscles exploding rang out incessantly, and the handsome knight who had been hiding behind the wall let out a stifled snort. He retreated over 10 steps, and blood flowed out from the corners of his lips. The tattooed man let out a cold laugh, kicked away the broken wall under his feet, and said, "Where did this lackey come from? To think that you're here to create trouble?" The handsome knight looked at the tattooed man, frowned, and said, "Who are you? I don't even remember someone like you in the Great Western region. Someone at the peak of the first transition shouldn't be a nameless person. Who I am isn't something that you're qualified to know," the tattooed man said arrogantly. "There are still 2 rats left? How can they possibly hide from me? Come out." As he spoke, the tattooed man's silhouette flickered. At the next moment, he split up several tens of afterimages and illusions, attacking in all directions. With a single move, he forced out the 2 knights, one male and one female. In the blink of an eye, the 4 of them were engaged in battle. Each of the tattooed man's actions brought forth countless afterimages and illusions, completely suppressing the 3 of them. The handsome knight said in astonishment. This is the spirit illusory path's myriad illusions fist? This technique should have been lost 200 years ago. How did you learn it? You only managed to recognize it now? It's too late. Take another one of my one fist 9 shadows. The man let out a maniacal laugh and punched out. In that instant, 9 illusions pounced out from his body, each striking out toward the 3 knights. Each of the illusions struck out with the prowess of the tattooed man's full-powered attack. Amidst the layers of air explosions, the 3 knights were sent flying and fell to the ground, unable to get up. Chapter 582. Behind the tattooed man, the commoners cheered. The tattooed man let out a cold laugh and walked toward the 3 of them. The 3 of you are good material. However, the next moment he suddenly stopped and looked behind the 3 of them with a grim gaze. A young man had unknowingly appeared there. Feng Xingjian did not say a word. He merely looked at the situation and the surroundings and slowly walked toward the tattooed man. The handsome knight also heard the sound. He turned to look at Feng Xingjian, who was walking toward him, and shouted, "Be careful." His myriad illusory shadow fist can use fist force to condense illusions and attack across space. Don't let him widen the distance between us. However, before he could finish his words, the tattooed man let out an explosive bellow and started to escape. "Oh, you know me?" Feng Xingjian calmly raised his palm and tapped out across space. As if he had just tapped a fly, the tattooed man was pressed to the ground. Then Sword Intense swept out, knocking out all the commoners and followers. Seeing how Feng Xingjian had dealt with the other parties so easily, the handsome knight and his 2 subordinates were all dumbfounded. The tattooed man glared at Feng Xingjian and said with a bitter smile, "To think that it's you. You've already set your sights on us? It's really as true Lord Qingshan said." "And who is true Lord Qingshan?" Feng Xingjian frowned and threw a glance toward the shadows in the south. It was as if sword light had swept past in void space. Amidst an agonizing cry, the tattooed man's partner, that short man, retreated from his invisible state and fell to the ground, covered in blood. His stomach had been pierced through. The tattooed man looked at Feng Xingjian with an expression as if he was facing death with equanimity. "Feng Xingjian, you can continue to be arrogant now. We already know your background. Our Shang was born to stop you. Countless legendary characters, experts, and heroes in history will come to stop you. Even true Lord Qingshan's gaze is on you. You're dead meat. I'll be waiting for you down there." Feng Xingjian's countenance went into a slight daze. Then he discovered that Feng Xingjian had self-destructed his martial will and turned into a vegetable. Martial will could be used to attack others, and naturally, it could also be used to attack oneself. After attacking oneself, one's consciousness would turn into countless broken fragments, unable to gather back to its original state. One would then become a vegetable or a lunatic. This kind of suicide could be said to be at the speed of light. Even Feng Xingjian did not stop it. However, this method of controlling one's martial will should at least be grasped by a conferred knight. How did Feng Xingjian know of it? The other person also committed suicide at the same time. Feng Xingjian's brows furrowed. "You know about my background?" He squinted his eyes slightly. His background was on Earth and Magic City, and his talent in swordsmanship. Shanghai and Earth did not matter. Even if they knew, it would not be a big problem. However, his sword arts talent, purple flames, and the black-clothed man. These were things that he had yet to figure out. He planned to head north to the Holy Sea of Truth after attaining the divine level and settling the matters here in the Empire. Now, someone actually said that they had seen through him. Could it be that someone knows about the purple flames as well? At the thought of this, Feng Xingjian soared into the sky, made a slight turn, and flew in the direction of the regional academy. My sudden inspiration senses were right. To think that there's still someone who knows about this? The moment Feng Xingjian returned to the regional academy, he ordered people to investigate the matter of Shang and to go all out to wipe out and capture this evil cult. Feng Xingjian's influence was extremely great. It could be said that after the second prince went into seclusion, he had become a spokesperson for the entire second prince's faction. He was the strongest expert in the Great Western region that no one could match up to, regardless of whether it was the underworld or the righteous path. With this order, countless knights and wild knights took action. The regional government sent people to investigate the matter of Shang, and the Illumination Society, Ice Palace, and other factions also sent people to help. In less than a week's time, many of Shang's bases have been wiped out. However, the people in this organization were too loyal. Almost every single one of them would self-detonate the moment they were caught. Moreover, ordinary commoners knew nothing about the organization's upper echelons. As several bases were wiped out, the entire Shang gradually quieted down, as if they had completely given up on the Great Western region. In Hildebrand's manor in the Great Western City, several voices were arguing in Hildebrand's mind. Damn it, who was the one who did this? To think that over half of our bases were wiped out. This is equivalent to wiping out all of our recent achievements. The crux is that quite a few reincarnators have died, and one of them was a divine-level expert in the past. What should we do? Now that the investigation is so intense, it's impossible for us to continue. Just as everyone was arguing, Grand Duke Alba, a divine-level expert whose name had shaken the world in the Jade Dynasty 5,000 years ago, said calmly, "All right, there's nothing to argue about. With the current situation in the Great Western region, the only person who could get both the underworld and the righteous path to cooperate with each other, and even the various factions to surround and attack us, is Feng Xingjian's order. Is it him? He's starting to take notice of us. We must fight against him to the end. We mustn't give up." Saint Luoluo, the saint who came from the Holy See of Truth 3,000 years ago, also said, "It's just that we don't know if Feng Xingjian did this unintentionally or if he's intentionally targeting us. If it's intentional, Marudo, the king of the seas, the king of the sky, and the king of the earth said it's impossible for it to be intentional. Our people won't divulge any information. Moreover, if he's really targeting us, Feng Xingjian will probably take action personally. He might have already chased us all the way here. The problem now is what we should do next," Grand Duke Alba said. "It's too dangerous to stay here. But if we leave the Great Western region, Hildebrand's influence won't be able to support our rapid development." Saying this, everyone looked toward true Lord Qingshan, who was deep in thought with his head lowered and countless streams of light flashing in his mind. True Lord Qingshan lifted his head and said, "Then let's go. Leave the Great Western region and head to the north. I can sense that there's a prehistoric force calling out to me there." In the sacred land, 4 short swords made of bone floated before Feng Xingjian. These 4 short swords had been made from his ribs. They looked like white jade, exuding waves of mysterious mist. At the next moment, Feng Xingjian formed a sword art in his hand, and the 4 short swords immediately emitted 4 different colors: black, red, yellow, and green. Infiltrating void. The black short swords darted through void space and entered spatial gaps. Light pursuit. The red short swords disappeared instantly, leaving behind several 10,000 sword marks on the ground. All-conquering. The yellow short swords soared into the sky, tearing through the atmosphere and unleashing a series of explosive sounds as if the air was being disintegrated. Instant. Then the green short swords disappeared and reappeared 100 meters away. Looking at the 4 short swords that flew back, Feng Xingjian nodded. During this period of time, after integrating the infiltrating void, light pursuit, and all-conquering swords, he had attempted to integrate these 3 swords into the instant sword. However, he had yet to succeed. After all, the instant sword was too profound and powerful. It would not be easy to integrate other things into it. Therefore, Feng Xingjian put his mind at ease and started to ponder the path of formations, wanting to turn them into his own sword formation. The 4 short swords before him were the results of his pondering. The myriad spirit sex formation was a formation that split up the physical bodies and consciousnesses of many experts, forming different formations. They would then be able to control the ether particles in space to increase their powers and unleash various attacks. Right now, the 4 short swords had 4 different sword intents channeled into them, by Fang Xingjian. They served as his clones to set up the sword formation. Chapter 583. The 4 white bone longswords were each channeled with Fang Xingjian's sword intents, and with Fang Xingjian's sword force, they formed a sword formation. Once they were unleashed, they would be able to attract the energy of endless ether particles into the white bone longswords, allowing them to perform the infiltrating void sword, light pursuit sword ripples, all-conquering sword, and instant sword respectively. The 4 white bone longswords borrowed the explosive power from the ether particles in the world. It was as if 4 unequipped Fang Xingjian were to perform the 5 god-slaying swords personally. There are still areas where the sword formation isn't perfect. My own cultivation is still lacking, and the nature of the white bone longswords is also too weak. Otherwise, the prowess of this sword formation could still be increased. Fang Xingjian looked at the 4 white bone longswords floating before him and thought, once this sword formation is performed, it'll be as if 4 of me are performing sword techniques simultaneously. Since that's the case, I'll just call this sword formation the Celestial Eradication Sword Formation. Right now, the lethality of the Celestial Eradication Sword Formation was already very strong. However, Fang Xingjian still looked forward to how much stronger the prowess of the sword formation would be as his cultivation and sword arts got. He wondered how much stronger the prowess of the sword formation would be. Just as Fang Xingjian was thinking about this, Zhou Xingwen walked in and reported Xingjian regarding Shang. A short moment later, after hearing Zhou Xingwen's report, Fang Xingjian nodded. You still haven't found them? It seems that they might have already left the Great Western region. Fang Xingjian said with a frown. Continue to monitor them. If we really can't find them, there's nothing we can do. Although Fang Xingjian wanted to know what Shang's background was like, the loyalty, secrecy, and viciousness of his subordinates had exceeded his expectations. Just as Fang Xingjian was thinking about Shang, Zhou Xingwen spoke again. Based on the news from the central region, Dongfang Ling challenged the leaders of the 12 factions in the central region 5 days ago. No one was able to take a single attack from him, and he's known as the top young expert in the imperial capital. Zhou Xingwen sighed and said, Now, everyone is saying that you and Dongfang Ling should be the strongest young experts in the empire. They're all looking forward to your fight. Fang Xingjian shrugged and said, There are just too many people who like to watch a good show. Zhou Xingwen smiled and said, However, Dongfang Ling said that he is looking forward to fighting with you. He hopes that if you have the time to go to the Central Plains, you can make friends with him through martial arts. Before Fang Xingjian and the 5th prince had appeared, Dongfang Ling had been the empire's #1 genius. He had passed the national selection at the age of 14 and became a national knight. Right now, Dongfang Ling was already 28 years old, and his cultivation could be said to be truly unfathomable. Furthermore, with the world's metamorphosis in the past few months, it was rumored that he was already extremely close to attaining the divine level. Right now, he was going around challenging experts in order to seek an opportunity to attain a breakthrough to the divine level. Fang Xingjian shook his head, not having much interest in Dongfang Ling. Right now, his opponents and the experts he was paying attention to were all divine level experts like the 1st Prince, the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord, the Undying Xia, and the Fist Emperor. Just then, Fang Xingjian suddenly lifted his head. His sudden inspiration and the 10th level of the mystical prince seemed to have sensed something. I'm going out for a while. After saying this, Fang Xingjian disappeared into the sky, leaving behind a series of afterimages. He completely let go of his consciousness and followed that feeling he had. His body cut across the atmosphere, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared on a mountain several kilometers away. He saw the 4th prince standing there. Seeing Fang Xingjian's arrival, the 4th prince was slightly stunned. Xingjian, how did you know that I've come to look for you? Fang Xingjian did not reply. Instead, he looked at the 4th prince with a muddled aura and said, The reason you've come to look for me is because of the Hades vault? The vault is about to be opened. That's right. The 4th prince was surprised for a moment. Then he nodded and said, Xingjian, the reason I've come to look for you is because the Hades vault is about to be opened. Accompany me there and help me retrieve the Senluo Six Heaven Sword. However, the Hades vault is a secret realm created by the mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor, the founder of the Jade Dynasty. Even though I have his sword art's legacy, I don't dare to say that it's 100% safe. I must be more careful. All right. Fang Xingjian nodded. Through his sudden inspiration senses, with his current abilities, this trip seemed to be filled with both dangers and opportunities. Therefore, he said concisely, "But I need to go back to get something." Simultaneously, his eyes seemed to shoot out streams of sword light that seemed to contain endless mysteries and chaos. It was as if they had pierced through the fourth prince's body as he said, "Philip, you're in the fourth prince's body?" Philip's marshal will carry the information over, and there seemed to be a hint of astonishment in it. "That's right. You can even tell this? It seems that your cultivation has improved tremendously during this period of time." He then explained, "My actual body has to guard the northern borders. Therefore, this time around, I can only leave 30% of my martial will's power in the fourth prince's body. I don't know what dangers there are in the Hades vault, so I'll have to trouble you to take care of the fourth prince." Fang Xingjian nodded. In the blink of an eye, he had already returned to the sacred land, leaving behind a black line in the sky, and appeared before Tyrant. Tyrant asked curiously, "What's the matter? I seem to have sensed that someone is spying on this place." Fang Xingjian said, "That's right. I'm going to a place that might be very dangerous. Come with me." Tyrant sighed and said, "Can I not go?" Fang Xingjian put out his wrist and said, "Hurry up. And what are you worried about? With our current abilities, even if we were to encounter a divine-level expert, we'll only know after fighting them." Tyrant shook his head helplessly and turned into a bracelet, darting onto Fang Xingjian's wrist. With a few flashes, Fang Xingjian appeared before the fourth prince and said, "I'm done. Let's go." The fourth prince threw a glance at Fang Xingjian's wrist, nodded, and said, "Then let's go." The two of them were both demigod experts. They passed through the cloud layers and flew at high speed, instantly cutting across the sky at a speed several tens of times that of supersonic speed. The air trembled, bringing about a myriad of thunderous sounds. However, the two of them had flown over several 100,000 meters into the sky. Although the commotion they created was still very great, the impact on the ground was rather small. In the blink of an eye, they had traversed the distance of several regions and arrived at the southern borders. The two of them cut through the cloud layers and slowly descended to a height of several hundred meters. They looked down at the lush green land, the countless mountain ranges, and the endless sounds of birds and beasts. It looked like a tropical rainforest. The fourth prince said, "It should be in the vicinity. I can sense the aura of the mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor. The Hades vault seems to have been opened." As they spoke, the two of them searched as they walked. In the blink of an eye, they arrived before a collapsed temple. A large part of the temple had been buried underground. There were all sorts of huge statues, mottled walls, and collapsed doors. All of these revealed an extremely ancient aura. The Jade Dynasty developed from the southern borders back then. Back then, their capital was also in the southern borders. It's said that when the Jade Dynasty unified the world, this place was once the most prosperous place in the entire world. Over 10 years ago, when I was roaming the southern borders, I accidentally obtained the legacy of the mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor. Looking at the temple before him, the fourth prince said, "It should be inside. I can sense that there seems to be another space inside. The Hades vault has already been opened." Fang Xingjian walked to the entrance, squatted down, and said, "There are traces on the ground. Someone has already entered." The fourth prince's countenance turned grim. "There's still someone who knows that the Hades vault has been opened? Could it be that other than me, there's someone else who has also obtained the legacy of the mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor?" Chapter 584. Just as Fang Xingjian was helping the fourth prince to explore the Hades vault, the incident in the northern ice region also started a ferment. Previously, the Pop clan and Henry clan had joined forces to suppress most of the influences in the northern ice region. Relying on Feng Xingjian's prowess at the banquet and their own powers, they had almost joined forces and unified most of the aristocratic influences in the northern ice region. The series of lightning-fast actions caused the two clans' influences to swell rapidly. After they stopped their actions and digested the results of their battles, the news of Feng Xingjian defeating a portion of Xia's marshal will finally spread out at the speed of a typhoon. Just as Feng Xingjian was exploring the Hades vault, he had once again shaken the world. In a manor outside the imperial city of the central continent, a young man with white hair, white eyebrows, and white eyes sat cross-legged on the lawn. With every breath he took, the grass and trees on the lawn would tremble at the same frequency. It was as if the white-haired young man had already become one with the entire world. Before him, a young man said, "Brotherling, to think that Feng Xingjian has defeated the martial will that Xia sent down when he's not even 20 years old. Although it's only a portion of his martial will, it's still too amazing. Are you really going to challenge him?" The white-haired young man opened his eyes, which were filled with emptiness. It was as if nothing in the world could leave behind any trace in his heart. Right now, the Empire's geniuses are none other than the five princes, me, the supreme chief, Feng Xingjian, and a few people from the seven great clans. The first prince has already attained the divine level and is currently suppressing the two great factions in the Xingwu region. I can't disturb him. Although the other four princes are powerful, it'll only take me 3 moves to kill them. The seven great clans have a legacy of 200 years, but it's a pity that they're all a bunch of scoundrels who only know how to hide and cultivate. They don't have the demeanor of a knight at all. Feng Xingjian is the only one who has risen up among the commoners. He has astonishing talent, and he has had many fortuitous encounters, allowing his strength to grow at a rapid rate. Only a genius like him is worthy of receiving a saber attack from me. After saying that, the white-haired young man raised his head and looked toward the sky. As his gaze moved, the clouds 10,000 meters up in the sky started to tear apart, splitting into two, revealing a stretch of pitch-black outer space. It was as if an invisible long blade had sliced through the sky. I'm just a step away from attaining the divine level. I only hope that this Feng Xingjian won't disappoint me, and that this body of mine will have the chance to catch a glimpse of the 9-tiered heaven's true appearance, advancing into the unparalleled realm of martial arts. Elsewhere, in the northeast of the Empire's northern ice region, in the middle of the enraged Dragon River, which was covered in ice and snow, several million tons of water gushed out incessantly, tearing apart everything before them. The cold air contained in the river was so cold that it could freeze any animal to death. Under such circumstances, a human figure emitted a faint fluorescent light and was wrapped into a ball-like object. Behind him, a scar-faced man glared with his eyes wide open. It was as if the water waves were pushed away by his condensed martial will that seemed to have taken on a material form. He forcefully withstood the water pressure of several million tons and opened up a space in the middle of the river. This person was the Fist Emperor, the leader of the Great River Alliance, and one of the 10 great divine level experts in the Empire. Next to him, the fifth prince, who was only left with his martial will, was distorted into an illusion. Tian he had mixed into the fifth prince's body, hiding in the deepest secret of the fifth prince's heart, helping the fifth prince to survive. As a life form that was purely formed from the will, it seemed that even the Fist Emperor had not discovered his existence. The Fist Emperor grabbed toward the bottom of the river under his feet across space. A myriad of air bubbles surged up from the bottom of the river, accompanied by loud, rumbling sounds. It was as if the entire enraged Dragon River was going to be crushed with a single grab. At the sight of this world-shaking power, the fifth prince felt a burning passion in his heart. This is the power of a divine level expert. Feng Xingjian, just you wait. I'll definitely kill you. At the next moment, the Fist Emperor grabbed out once again. It was as if he had shaken up void space, and a large piece of crystalline substance in the middle of the river was grabbed out. All right, this is the ice crystal formed from the condensation of the enraged Dragon River's cold aura over 10 million years. Today, I'll use this ice crystal to forge a divine physique with icy muscles and cold bones for you. Go in quickly." The fifth prince nodded and dashed into the ice crystal with a swoosh. In that instant, a violent chill came gushing over, almost freezing his thoughts. How is this possible? I don't even have a physical body right now, only having my martial will left. To think that even this ice crystal can affect me? Hush, the Fist Emperor said. This ice crystal has been around for 10 million years and has absorbed a tremendous amount of information and energy from ether particles. It has already developed a simple will. As long as you defeat it, your martial will naturally improve tremendously. Yes. In the ice crystal, the fifth prince and Tion started to fend off the waves of chill that seemed to want to freeze their thoughts. After 10 days and 10 nights, a snow-white figure darted out from the middle of the river. Violent cold air shot out in all directions, freezing an entire 10 li of the enraged Dragon River. Within a 10 li radius, all of the river water instantly froze and came to a standstill, turning into many ice flowers that stood in the world. Ha ha ha! The fifth prince laughed out loud. Ice is my bones, and ice crystals as my muscles. With this body that's been forged from a 10,000-year-old ice crystal, my physical strength is already comparable to that of a divine-level expert. Elder brother, it's all thanks to you this time around. The Fist Emperor, who had a face full of scars, floated up slowly, looked at the fifth prince, and said, "Sworn brother, are you going to look for Feng Xingjian for revenge now?" That's right. Right now, my body has been forged, and my martial will has also absorbed the hint of the will from the 10,000-year-old ice crystal that can freeze the world. Even if a divine-level expert wishes to defeat me, they'll have to go all out and seriously attack me. Ordinary conferred knights are no longer a match for me. Saying this, a hint of savageness flashed on the fifth prince's face. I'm going to look for Feng Xingjian for revenge now. I'm going to let him suffer 10 or even 100 times the pain I've suffered. The Fist Emperor frowned. If it was not because he had an extraordinary relationship with the fifth prince's mother and had been indebted to her for giving him a new lease on life, he would not be willing to take care of this rascal. He could only say, "Sworn brother, have you forgotten that you were defeated by Feng Xingjian previously because you were too rash? Previously, you were cultivating, so I didn't tell you about this. A few days ago, Feng Xingjian had a conflict with the 8-directional Crimson Dragon in the Northern Ice region. Xia sent down a stream of martial will, but it was killed by Feng Xingjian. This person's cultivation is already world-shaking, and you're probably not a match for him yet. Moreover, it's said that he's wearing a divine armor with powers that are like the mountains and seas. It's probably a divine remains equipment." What? When the fifth prince heard this, the killing intent in his eyes skyrocketed. It was filled with bone-deep hatred. He must have taken my armor and modified it into his own. This piece of trash, I must kill him. But how did his cultivation increase so quickly? To think that he can already go up against Xia's martial will? Thinking of this, he lifted his head and looked at the Fist Emperor, saying, "Elder brother, why don't you head to the Great Western region with me and help me kill Feng Xingjian?" Chapter 585. The Fist Emperor frowned and said, "Right now, the Empire wants to purge the factions. If I were to kill Feng Xingjian now, your father will probably turn his spear against me immediately. Moreover, if you want to seek revenge, you should lower your head and train hard. What's the point of relying on my strength?" The fifth prince lowered his head. At the thought of how Feng Xingjian had worn his armor and dominated the world, his cultivation growing incessantly, and even being able to fight against divine-level experts, his heart felt as if it was being bitten by 10,000 ants. He looked at the Fist Emperor and said, "Then how about this? Elder brother, please let me cultivate the Azura Path with you." The Azura Path was a terrifying killing technique that the Fist Emperor cultivated. It was also a martial art that was cruel to enemies and even crueler to oneself. Tigers eat sheep, sheep eat grass, and grass absorbs nutrients from all living things. The nature of this world is a form of cruelty. To be able to understand cruelty to be cruel to enemies, to be cruel to oneself, to absorb nutrients from cruelty, and to comprehend the balance of the world. This is the Azura path, the Fist Emperor said in a low voice. When humans are in pain, their potential will be stimulated, and injured beasts will be even more brutal. The Azura path improves rapidly, but uses the human body's instincts toward pain and cruelty to stimulate the growth of cultivation. It brings great harm to both the physical body and the mind. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes, the fifth prince said. If I don't kill Feng Xingjian, if I don't completely crush him in terms of power and surpass him, I'd rather die than live. Feng Xingjian was still unaware of the various changes that had taken place in the empire. After doing some research at the entrance of the temple, he and the fourth prince had already confirmed that someone had entered it. It seems that someone else has also received the mystic abyss heavenly emperor's legacy, the fourth prince said with a grim countenance. We'll have to be even more careful when we enter this time around. We'll deal with whatever comes our way. Feng Xingjian looked at the traces outside the door and said, The traces disappeared at the door. It seems that something will happen the moment we enter the door. The fourth prince nodded and said, The mystic abyss heavenly emperor from 5,000 years ago was a powerful character who unified the world and led humanity to fend off the fifth onslaught. His divine level cultivation was probably above level 35, 36, or even 37. He had the powerful ability to control space-time and open up space. I'm afraid that the Nine Nether Vault that he created is not on the continent, but in a space-time that he created himself. Feng Xingjian nodded. He looked at the door and said, Then let's go. The two of them were on full alert, and the energy in their bodies was ready. They walked toward the door together. At the next moment, Feng Xingjian and the fourth prince entered the temple together. At the instant they entered, a series of light and shadows changed before their eyes, and it was as if time and space had been distorted. When they could see again, they had already arrived in an extremely vast sky. The entire sky was filled with lightning, thunder, hurricanes, and endless thunderstorms. Suddenly appearing amidst the layers of storms, the two of them were stunned for a moment. At the next moment, they activated their specialty seeds and stepped into void space, stabilizing themselves with the void birth force. Feng Xingjian frowned, and bolts of lightning flashed all over his body. I can feel an invisible force tearing at the physical particles in my body, trying to suck me underground. The fourth prince's body also flashed with lightning, continuously strengthening the power between the physical particles. He then lowered his head and looked at the layers of hurricanes and thunderbolts under his feet. There's a force that continues to break down all physical matter and then absorb them in the direction under our feet. A hint of astonishment flashed in the fourth prince's eyes. It said that powerful divine level experts can distort space-time. How big is this Nine Nether Vault that the mystic abyss heavenly emperor created? I don't know. Feng Xingjian looked at the seething clouds, lightning, burning fire clouds, and flashes of light that were so deep that they could not be seen. He said, Everything will continue to be sucked into the center. Then let's go down and take a look. At the next moment, the two of them dashed deep into the clouds. However, after dashing out for several tens of kilometers, Feng Xingjian pulled the fourth prince along and came to a stop. The fourth prince looked at him strangely and asked, What's the matter? An inexplicable expression flashed in Feng Xingjian's eyes as he said, Let's wait a while. I've been feeling that there's someone following us along the way. Let's take a look and see if that's the case. Not long after the two of them left, about 1 to 2 minutes later, a stream of gray light appeared. It was the Serene Shrine's top elder, the Worm King. It turned out that the Serene Shrine had been paying attention to the fourth prince's movements all this while. However, at the instant the Worm King appeared, a stream of sharp sword light burst out from his body, instantly slashing him into several hundred pieces of minced meat. A myriad of agonizing cries rang out from his body, and in that instant, his body turned into a myriad of flying bugs that scattered in all directions. At the same time as the Worm King scattered, Feng Xingjian's sword fingers moved, and the light pursuit sword ripples swept out, wanting to kill the myriad of bugs once again. However, at the same time that the light pursuit sword ripples were activated, waves of black aura rose up from the Worm King's sea of bugs, turning into a myriad of black snakes that collided fiercely with the light pursuit sword ripples, fending off Feng Xingjian's attack. The aura of the black snakes formed a body that had the upper body of a human and the lower body of a snake. It was like a demon from the legends, standing amidst the thunderbolts and flaming clouds. The Worm King also reassembled successfully, taking on a human form and hiding behind Feng Xingjian. Feng Xingjian frowned and said, "World Annihilation, Heavenly Lord? You've been following us?" Feng Xingjian had sensed that there was someone chasing after them, and he had brought the fourth prince along to pass through spatial gaps. However, he had not been able to shake off that feeling. Now that he saw the World Annihilation, Heavenly Lord appear, he instantly understood why. Divine Level Martial Wu could directly scan the existence of spatial gaps, just like how Li Shuanghua had been able to do in the past. This figure that had emerged from the Worm King's body and was condensed from martial will was the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord. Clearly, he had also sent a portion of his will onto the Worm King's body and had followed the fourth prince all the way to the Hades Vault. Hearing Feng Xingjian's words, the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord said coldly, "That's right. Both you and the fourth prince are people who have been blessed by the heavens and have had your own fortuitous encounters. Of course, I'll be keeping an eye on the two of you and snatching your fortuitous encounters. All the things that we obtain from the Hades Vault will definitely belong to our Terrene Shrine." Is that so? Just as the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord finished saying this, another two black shadows descended from the sky. Surges of auras from the sulfur purgatory and hellish lava came down from the sky, as if dragging the entire space into hell. All the lands in the world belong to the Imperial Kingdom. World Annihilation Heavenly Lord, have you asked me before you want to seize the Empire's land? At the next moment, a huge black palm descended from the sky. It was so huge that it seemed to fill up the entire world. It was pitch black like the river Styx in hell, and violent like the scorching sun in the sky. Violent powers came smashing down, and the overturned hell pressed out. The World Annihilation Heavenly Lord let out an agonizing cry, and the figure that he had condensed from his martial will was sent flying out, shattering and shattering. The World Annihilation Heavenly Lord screamed, "George Krieg, you've attained the second tier of the divine level." The first prince's voice seemed to have pierced through time and space, ringing out from all directions. "Fourth brother, I've long known that you've received the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor's legacy. It's one thing that you don't think about cultivating the path of hell's martial arts, and only want to obtain these small legacies. However, the country is in danger now, and the situation is changing. Why aren't you coming out quickly and assisting me in retrieving the Hades Vault to replenish the national treasury?" Chapter 586. The Dark Knight was standing at the entrance of the Hades Vault. Next to him, a set of platinum-colored armor stood in void space, emitting an intense aura of sulfur and lava. It was like an active volcano that would erupt at any moment. The armor seemed to be formed from many segments of unknown bones, flashing with bits of white-boned spiritual light. It was as if a demon lord from hell had descended. The World Annihilation Heavenly Lord's martial will swept out as he said, "Hell's white bone armor? So that's how it is. You're not a Tier 2 divine level expert who created a clone with your will. Instead, you've placed a portion of your martial will into the armor." At the thought of this, the greed in the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord's eyes surged. This hell's white bone armor of the ancient path of hell was a treasured armor passed down by each generation's sect master. It was said that the founder of the ancient path of hell, Saint Adam, had killed 99 types of ancient divine beasts, 72 demons from beyond the heavens, and 12 divine level experts. He had also expended countless heavenly and earthly treasures to forge this armor. The power contained within it was like the mountains and the seas. Moreover, this set of armor was used purely for defense. It was said to be indestructible and impervious to all evils. Excellent, excellent, excellent. To think that the Abyss Lord has even passed down this set of armor to you, the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord said. Since that's the case, you can leave this set of armor behind. As he spoke, streams of gray light rose up from his body. Several black space-time tunnels opened up, and many tentacles extended out from them. They intertwined together and soon formed a huge ball of flesh that was beating like a huge heart. The first prince's brows twitched, and the Hell's white bone armor's hands rose up abruptly, slapping down toward the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord with another overturned hell. Simultaneously, a powerful martial will swept out toward Feng Xingjian. Feng Xingjian, the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord, defies human nature and is a malignant tumor of the world. Let's join forces and crush his clone first. He's performing black magic to summon the flesh and blood of an alternate world's demon lord, using it to form a battle physique. We mustn't let him succeed. As the first prince spoke, a huge black palm had already slapped down fiercely onto the huge ball of flesh. With an explosive bang, under the seething power, the endless space and light rays became distorted. The atmosphere within a range of 100 lis exploded, and all the lightning, fire clouds, and thunderbolts were crushed. Under this overturned hell's terrifying attack, the alternate world's demon lord's flesh and blood splattered in all directions. It let out agonizing cries. It was as if an infant was crying or an Anath demon fetus was being incubated. Xingjian, what should we do? The fourth prince's will sent his will into Feng Xingjian's mind. With a flash, Feng Xingjian's finger tore through the sky, bringing along an astonishing sword chi that was 10 kilometers long and slashing out fiercely toward the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord. Eye of the world, to heavenly, heavenly, heavenly first. Heave heavenly, heavenly, heavenly of chi. To Feng of Dragon, the demon world, the saint, he said. Hissing sounds rang out incessantly, and the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord bellowed furiously. Feng Xingjian, are you crazy? Quickly join forces with me to defeat the first prince. Otherwise, with the help of this hell's white bone armor, his will be able to unleash over 50% of his true body's powers. Feng Xingjian did not reply to the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord and activated the light pursuit sword ripples. Several 10 million sword ripples slashed down continuously, slashing the demon lord's flesh and blood splattering everywhere. Blood rained down. Howl, 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 howl. Violent, enraged bellows brought along waves of sound waves as they emitted from the demon lord's flesh. A human figure that was completely blood-red, as if it had just emerged from a pool of blood, darted out from the flesh and blood. It was level 11 black magic, Crimson Corpse King. It summoned a Crimson Corpse King from an alternate world and temporarily controlled its will to battle. The instant the Crimson Corpse King appeared, the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord's marshal will darted in, and blood flames started to burn all over his body. All of you must die. Inextinguishable flames. A loud boom rang out. The World Annihilation Heavenly Lord emitted endless light and heat, as if a sun had risen into the sky. Endless flames burst out from the Crimson Corpse King's body, filling up every inch of space within a range of 1,000 lis. The even more terrifying thing was that as these flames spread out, they did not show any signs of being extinguished. Instead, they turned into lumps of plasma that filled up the sky, heating up and disintegrating everything, turning them into the most fundamental physical particles. Thankfully, Feng Xingjian had hidden himself in the spatial gaps. The Dark Knight and the fourth prince retreated rapidly as they cut off the parts of their bodies that were on fire and regenerated them. What kind of flames are these? To think that they can't be extinguished. The Dark Knight cried out in surprise as he cut off his right hand. The first prince continued to stand in void space, not moving at all. The Hell's white bone armor emitted waves of hellish lava aura, and all the flames that came near him would turn into lumps of light and heat, being absorbed into the battle armor. It was as if he was truly indestructible and impervious to all evil. Simultaneously, at the center of the explosion, the Crimson Corpse King from earlier had already disappeared. To think that the earlier attack was a self-detonation attack from a creature from an alternate world. At the same time that the Crimson Corpse King disappeared, another 3 sets of Demon King flesh slowly appeared, pulsating and hatching. Clearly, the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord had summoned another 3 Crimson Corpse Kings to self-detonate. Such an attack was far too shameless and ferocious. Fang Xingjian could imagine that such an attack would only take 1 second to flatten the entire demonic city. It was no wonder that the Empire wanted to wipe out the Serene Shrine. A lunatic like this was far too dangerous. Just as the 3 Crimson Corpse Kings were about to self-detonate, the first prince and Fang Xingjian made their moves at the same time. The first prince used the ancient path of hell's direct lineage technique, mortal world reversal. His 2 palms were like 2 huge millstones crushing against each other. Waves of violent power spun out, and it was as if there were countless wheels spinning endlessly in the sky. Waves of air currents and the flames left behind by the Crimson Corpse Kings were all brought up. They rubbed against each other, spun, and destroyed each other. It was as if a great millstone from hell was about to descend from the sky, twisting, obliterating, overturning, and reversing all the mountains and rivers, men and women, old and young, good and evil. An intent that wanted to overturn black and white, plunge the world into chaos, and turn the mortal world into hell was contained within. It was as if it could distort one's will. With a single move, mortal world reversal, a spiral-shaped spatial distortion descended from the sky, smashing toward the 3 Crimson Corpse Kings. In the blink of an eye, the 3 Crimson Corpse Kings seemed to be stretched out endlessly, turning into many long strands of spinning noodle, turning into an increasingly turbid spiral. Just as the first prince performed the mortal world reversal, which obliterated yin and yang and reversed good and evil, Fang Xingjian also performed his ultimate move, the all-conquering sword. In the blink of an eye, many sword marks extended out in the spiral space. They were like countless cracks on a piece of glass, filling up the entire space where the Crimson Corpse Kings were at in the blink of an eye. Chapter 587. Although the first prince and Fang Xingjian had not communicated with each other, their moves were almost perfectly coordinated, completely suppressing the Crimson Corpse King's self-detonating flames. Boom! A spark exploded from the center. However, under the distortions of the mortal world reversal and the slashes of the all-conquering sword, the flames were unable to spread out at all. They could only continue to be spun, slashed, and weakened. Very soon, they completely dissipated into the air. Then a gush of black smoke darted out, but it was also wrapped up by the spatial spiral formed by the mortal world reversal. Then it was slashed apart by the all-conquering sword. This sword attack that could slash through even light and electromagnetic waves could naturally also slash through the waves of human martial will. After a series of several thousand sword attacks, the black smoke became increasingly lesser, almost disappearing completely. George Creek, Fang Xingjian, I'll still be back. Their attacks had not only killed the 3 Crimson Corpse Kings, but they had also completely wiped out the martial will that the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord had sent down. The Grey Worm King wanted to escape, but it felt a piercing pain all over its body. Its body had been pierced through by several million light pursuit sword ripples. Fang Xingjian. The Worm King bellowed furiously, and a myriad of evil worms spewed out venom that could melt a level 29 divine weapon. The venom passed through the air, bringing with it a putrid stench. It was as if a myriad of aggrieved souls could be seen twisting and crying out in it. However, with a dash, Fang Xingjian dodged into the spatial gaps. At the same time as Fang Xingjian dodged, a huge black palm descended from the sky. With the overturned hell, the Worm King was like a crushed cockroach, and countless worms were turned into pools of liquid from across space. Then the black palm retracted rapidly, and Fang Xingjian's light pursuit sword ripples turned into waves of sword cheese, tearing through void space and sweeping through the Worm King's remains like shock waves, instantly disintegrating it into basic particles. This series of attacks could be said to be a dazzling sight. Both Fang Xingjian and the first prince attempted to attack each other and dodged the attacks as they killed the Worm King. After the Worm King was killed, the first prince and the Dark Knight stood in void space, their gazes sweeping through the space within several hundred leagues with an intense pressure. Have they left? The first prince frowned and said, "This Fang Xingjian is getting harder and harder to deal with. With my current state of controlling the Hell's white bone armor, although I'm in an invincible position, it's not that easy to suppress him." The Dark Knight said, "Your Highness, let's go in quickly and obtain the legacy of the Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor first." The first prince nodded, and in the next moment, the two of them had already turned into two astonishing long arcs, bringing along streams of air currents as they descended toward the depths of the Hades vault. On the other side, Fang Xingjian brought the fourth prince along as he shuttled through void space, leaping between spatial gaps time and time again, endlessly heading deeper into the Hades vault. The fourth prince asked, "Xingjian, why don't we continue to fight? It's rare for eldest brother to split out some of his powers to fight, especially with you around. Philip has also split out 30% of his martial will here. If the three of us join forces and catch him off guard, we might really have a chance to take down this clone of eldest brother." Before Fang Xingjian could reply, Philip, who was in the fourth prince's body, said, "You mustn't. The reason why the first prince dares to split out his clone to fight is because of the Hell's white bone armor. This armor was created by Saint Adam and contains extraordinary powers. Moreover, this armor was purely for defense. A total of 99 divine-level ferocious beasts, 72 demons from beyond the heavens summoned by the mages, and 12 divine-level experts had been depleted. With all these powers gathered together for defense, how powerful would it be? There are almost no attacks that are effective. It can be said that ever since the ancient path of Hell's establishment, the Hell's white bone armor has never been broken. It can be said to be an unrivaled equipment that is hard to surpass." The fourth prince's gaze flickered as he said, "It's that powerful. It's that powerful," Philip said. "This unrivaled armor can convert all attacks into pure heat energy and then absorb the heat energy into its body, forming an unrivaled defense. It's because of its pure defense that the ancient path of Hell has been able to survive until now, protecting generations of sect masters from falling." The fourth prince frowned. At the thought of how his eldest brother had such an armor, he felt a strong sense of threat. He continued to ask, "So this Hell's white bone armor can't be broken through, and we can only think of ways to seal and suppress it?" "That's right," Philip said solemnly. "Either our divine level cultivation reaches level 34, 35, or even 36, reaching a level that surpasses our imagination. Then we might be able to defeat him." Fang Xingjian did not say anything, nor did he explain why he had retreated earlier. He did not know what the Hell's white bone armor was. He had only retreated earlier because he had sensed danger through his spiritual senses. Therefore, he had retreated, giving up on fighting against the first prince. Right now, after traversing for about several hundred kilometers, Fang Xingjian suddenly came to a stop. He looked at the increasingly higher altitude, the increasingly stronger suction force, and the space in front of him that was filled with explosions, thunderbolts, and flames. He frowned and said, "There's something wrong with this space." About half an hour after Fang Xingjian and the first prince had left, a blue-haired young man slowly appeared. A beautiful young lady followed behind him, patting her chest and saying, "What a terrifying battle. To think that the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord and the first prince have both entered as well. And that Fang Xingjian, to think that he can fight against the clones of the two of them. What terrifying sword arts." The blue-haired young man frowned slightly and said, I had initially thought that Fang Xingjian is just someone with an undeserved reputation, a target that the Krieg clan's second son has brought up. To think that his sword arts cultivation has already reached such a level. He'll probably be able to step into the divine level at any moment now. Thinking of this, he let out a soft laugh. To think that other than our 7 great clans, there's still someone else who can reach this level. The 7 great clans were the descendants of the 8 divine level experts who had founded the country. Other than the Krieg royal family, the other 7 divine level experts had left behind. For the past 200 years, they had been recuperating in secret, increasing their strength, and silently accumulating their battle prowess. When the world's metamorphosis started, they finally started to surface. "Brother, aren't we going to give chase?" the young lady asked. The mysterious young man smiled, and his eyes were filled with brilliant confidence. "There's no hurry. The first prince merely followed someone else here, while the 4th prince merely obtained the mystic abyss heavenly emperor's sword arts legacy. I'm the only one who has obtained the true core legacy of the mystic abyss heavenly emperor, the cultivation method for the netherworld river netherworld waves. If I were to hide in the Hades vault, even those divine level experts won't be able to discover me. And as long as I'm willing to, I can even borrow the powers of the Hades vault. Moreover, although the Krieg royal family is in the center of the 8 great founding clans and has inherited the throne, they are still a tall tree that attracts the wind. Each generation has to expend a tremendous amount of energy and power to govern the country. They're not like our 7 clans, who can focus on cultivating and wait for the arrival of the onslaught. Thinking of this, a hint of hatred and greed flashed on the young man's face. Right now, they still aren't clear about the true structure of the Hades vault. I'll just let them continue to go deeper. The deeper they go, the stronger my power will be. A person like Fang Xingjian is too talented. There shouldn't be people like him in this world. I'll kill him, and then perform the netherworld river netherworld to snatch away his sword arts. Thinking of this, the young man's face revealed extreme desire and greed. Chapter 588. Fang Xingjian sensed the increasingly powerful suction force coming from the surroundings, as well as the continuous explosions, seas of fire, and thunderbolts. He frowned and said, "As we go deeper, the explosions seem to get increasingly stronger. Even the space is starting to distort, and the temperature continues to rise. Especially in the space of 100 kilometers that we just passed through, there seems to be a qualitative change in the temperature and pressure." The 4th prince and Philip sensed it as well and said, "That's true." As a divine level expert, Philip sent his martial while sweeping out, and the range of his senses became even wider. His countenance changed as he said, "This space seems to be continuously breaking down matter through high temperature and pressure, then absorbing the physical particles into the space below. This feeling, it's just like the sun." Fang Xingjian's brows twitched. Breaking down all matter and then absorbing them into the center to be heated up, burning them as fuel? It's probably burning the physical particles directly, producing a powerful energy source to maintain the operation of the entire space. It's just similar. Although divine level experts are powerful, they're not real gods, Philip said. Although I don't know why the Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor wanted to create such a space, it's impossible for him to create a real sun. Let's continue forward. With our abilities, we should be able to withstand the high temperature and pressure. The mysterious blue-haired young man led the pretty young lady forward as well. The young man said, "The Mystic Abyss Vault is the Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor's final effort. It's split into 9 levels from the outside to the inside, and only the central space forms a huge piece of land under extreme pressure. In each area, the temperature and pressure will increase by more than 1-fold. 9 levels of space, and the center is land." The young lady said in surprise, "It's an imitation of our world and the 9-tiered heavens." That's right. The Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor lived up to his reputation as an unparalleled expert who unified a world and led humanity to fight against the onslaught. His initial goal in creating this Hades vault was not to treat it as a treasure, but to create a small world that also had the nine-tiered heavens and was constantly in a state of metamorphosis. And with each level, time will accelerate. At the final level, even if one were to stay in there for a few years, only a day would have passed outside. The mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor's control over time and space is far too powerful. If he really succeeds, he'll be able to produce an endless supply of experts through this world, allowing humanity to easily fight against the onslaught in the future. Even if the resistance fails, we can retreat to this small world and no longer be threatened by any danger. Hearing the mysterious youth introduce the situation of the Hades Vault, creating a world, and saving the human race, the young lady was completely shocked. What a great plan, but he still failed in the end, right? Otherwise, it would be impossible to seal the Hades Vault and treat it as a treasury. Not bad. The blue-haired young man sighed and said, "There's a limit to one's strength." Even a mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor wasn't omnipotent. He created a small world that could operate for countless years, stretching space, accelerating time, and opened up a world. However, he was still unable to create the true nine-tiered heavens. Therefore, there's no way to advance to the divine level in the Hades Vault, and there's no way to advance from level 31 to level 39 after reaching the divine level through the 9 levels of space here. A deity rank expert would never be able to improve by staying here. To a deity rank expert, this place is just like a graveyard. The young lady nodded. If a deity rank expert were to be trapped here, unable to make any progress in their cultivation despite the passing of years, and only able to watch their lifespan pass by at an accelerated rate, it would indeed be a fate worse than death. As the young man continued to venture deeper into the Hades Vault, he continued to say, "However, the powers of the Hades Vault are still not to be underestimated. It continues to absorb physical substances from beyond the heavens and drag them into this small world. It then breaks them down into the most basic physical particles and absorbs them into the center to burn them at the level of physical particles, unleashing the power of the essence of endless physical particles to maintain the changes in space and time. The legacy left behind by the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor is located at the very center. It's the Senluo Six Heavens Sword, which contains the endless wealth that the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor left behind to help humanity fight against the onslaught. Saying this, the corners of the young man's lips curled up, revealing a hint of a smile. However, to others, that is the most dangerous place. But to me, it's the safest place. I've received the legacy of the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor's waves and can control a portion of the Hades Vault's powers. Borrowing the almost endless energy in the Vault's core, my abilities are equivalent to that of a divine-level expert. After advancing for a total of 3 hours, with Feng Xingjian and the other's speed, they would be able to cross almost the entire world. However, other than the increasing pressure and high temperature, as well as the endless burning and explosions, they did not see anything else. Philip frowned as well. Isn't the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor's control over space too powerful? Divine-level experts are able to stretch out such a vast space. Moreover, I sense that the flow of time doesn't seem to be quite right. Level 29 conferred knights could already sense the flow of time and the changes in space. It was even more so for divine-level experts. The fourth prince nodded as well. He looked at Feng Xingjian and asked, "Xingjian, how do you feel?" Feng Xingjian did not say anything. He merely performed the Mountainous Seas Book of the Way and sensed his lifespan. His lifespan, which had been decreasing by the second, now required a total of 10 seconds for it to jump once. Has the time in there been accelerated? And to think that my lifespan hasn't increased along with the acceleration. Feng Xingjian smiled coldly and thought to himself, they really want me to die 3 years later without missing even a single second. Hearing the fourth prince's words, Feng Xingjian said calmly, "Time has been accelerated. As we continue to get closer, the acceleration of time will probably get increasingly stronger." When Philip and the fourth prince heard this, their frowns deepened. Philip asked, Xingjian, how are you able to sense all these? He used all his powers to sense, and seemed to have discovered that there were really such signs. However, he still did not dare to be certain. The changes in time were too hard to sense. To be able to sense the flow of time was already an extremely high level of cultivation. Not to mention sensing the acceleration of time, or even being able to control time, like the mystic abyss heavenly emperor. Fang Xingjian did not say anything. Instead, he slowed down, and waves of chaotic and indifferent aura flashed in his eyes, giving off an intense feeling that he was not human. He said slowly, let's take our time. I feel that the mystic abyss heavenly emperor's legacy isn't something that can be obtained so easily. Let's cultivate as we move forward. We can make use of the time here to speed up our cultivation and wait for our enemy to tire us out. The fourth prince gave it some thought. Thinking of Fang Xingjian's consecutive deductions, be it that there was someone following them, that there was danger, or that they had left, and even that the flow of time seemed to be correct, the fourth prince decided to trust him once more. He said, all right, we'll listen to you. In Fang Xingjian's eyes, waves of indifferent aura grew increasingly stronger. He was like a god high up in the heavens, controlling the circulation of the heavenly laws and looking down on the mortal world. Concurrently, he thought to himself, I can make good use of this time to condense ether organs in this accelerated space-time and strive for the divine level. He also thought, if this Hades vault can really continue to accelerate time without affecting his lifespan, wouldn't he be able to stay here and have even more lifespan? Thereafter, the three of them advanced at a slower speed, maintaining their battle prowess. Fang Xingjian even spent half of his mental energy on condensing ether organs. As they continued to venture deeper, the temperature and pressure in the surroundings continued to rise. The entire space seemed to have turned into a huge bronze furnace, and they were being scorched by the high temperature and high pressure in this bronze furnace. They were constantly using their powers to strengthen their physical bodies, increasing their toughness. Both Fang Xingjian and the second prince could sense that their physical bodies seemed to have become even sturdier and stronger under such tempering. It was as if they were a piece of well-tempered steel that had been hammered repeatedly, leaving only the toughest parts behind. Just like that, 2 months passed by in the blink of an eye, including the first time that Fang Xingjian and the others experienced. They had gone through a total of 9 qualitative changes in temperature and pressure. The space before them still seemed to have no end. However, one day, Fang Xingjian's gaze continued to shine brightly, and a series of rumbling explosions rang out from his body. It was as if countless worlds were being destroyed and born. The fourth prince and Philip both looked toward Fang Xingjian's body. This is Chapter 589. At the next moment, Fang Xingjian opened his mouth and let out an explosive bellow. It was like thunder from the 9 heavens, and endless sound waves gushed out in all directions, extinguishing countless fire clouds and explosions. Then Fang Xingjian took in a deep breath, and it was as if a black hole had suddenly appeared in the sky. Endless light, air currents, and flames were instantly sucked into Fang Xingjian's mouth. Fang Xingjian's body was like an endless space, and it was also as if some kind of potential in his physical body had been completely unleashed. All sorts of powers in the world, including geomagnetic forces, astral rays, sunlight, and many other powers, were all sucked wildly into Fang Xingjian's body, filling up every single physical particle in his body. The energy that had been depleted in the Hades vault was rapidly replenished. The fourth prince said in astonishment, "This state. His ether organs have attained perfection?" Philip's countenance was also grim as he said, "That's right. What a fast speed. The condensation of ether organs has always been the greatest test of one's mastery and time. I had thought that he would need at least 1 to 2 years. To think that he has succeeded so quickly." As they spoke, the abnormalities on Fang Xingjian's body gradually disappeared, and his physical body once again calmed down. At this moment, Feng Xingjian's ether organs reached perfection, and his energy recovery rate reached an unprecedented level. The energy that he had depleted in the Hades vault along the way had once again recovered to its peak. Level 29, 5 tiers of perfection. Feng Xingjian could faintly sense a kind of restriction. It was as if at this stage his powers could no longer increase in the slightest. His battle prowess seemed to have reached a level 29, the pinnacle below the divine level. This feeling was blurry, but it was definitely there. Although the ether organs did not directly increase his battle prowess, it increased his recovery rate greatly. He almost did not have to worry about any energy depletion and could unleash his full powers at all times. Tyrant, how are you? I completed a long time ago. Have you forgotten that I know black magic? Using black magic to create ether organs, I completed it 10 days ago. Right now, I've reached 4 tiers of perfection. All right. In the next moment, Feng Xingjian's eyes flashed with an inexplicable aura as he said, "Let's go. I feel that our chance has come." What? Before the fourth prince could react, he was already grabbed by Feng Xingjian. With an explosive boom, the area within a range of 100 lis was turned into a sea of flames by the violent power. The two of them instantly reached an extreme speed, continuously darting through spatial gaps one after another at high speed, heading towards the center of the Hades vault. Sensing the space around him receding rapidly, Feng Xingjian could not help but feel amazed at how vast the Hades vault was. At the same time, as he looked at the increasing flow of time, Feng Xingjian suddenly understood something. Even the mystic abyss, Heavenly Emperor, would probably not be able to create such a large world. He should have started it 5,000 years ago. And during these 5,000 years, several 100,000 to several million years have passed in the Hades vault. It was only through the incessant burning and explosions that it expanded to its current state. At the beginning, time did not even accelerate so much. It's only as so many years passed that more and more physical particles were burned, and the gravity and mass kept on changing that the space became increasingly larger and time became increasingly faster. At this moment, even Feng Xingjian was impressed by the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor's ingenious design when he had created the Hades vault. Elsewhere, in the center of the Hades vault, there was a piece of pure black land. The entire land was filled with a deathly aura. There was not a hint of life, nor could any living creatures or plants be seen. It was as if it was a meteorite from outer space. If one took a closer look, they would be able to discover that the entire land was trembling and undulating. It was not solid, but a type of gas, or rather plasma. It looked like a piece of land, but it was better to say that it was a lump of black flames. In the center of this flaming land, the first prince stood in void space. The area within a range of 1,000 lis around him was engulfed by endless flaming explosions. Almost every minute and every second, there would be a myriad of fire waves and shock waves lashing out at the first prince's body with a power that could crush mountains and rivers, as well as overturn seas and rivers. Waves of pressure came from across space, pressing down on the first prince's body. It was as if they wanted to crush every single physical particle in his body into dust. Right now, almost every inch of the first prince's skin was resisting a pressure that was as heavy as mountains and rivers. It was as if he was holding up the mountains, rivers, and country all by himself. The dark night had already disappeared, and no one knew where he had gone. However, no matter how they attacked, they were unable to break through the hell's white bone armor. This treasure of the ancient path of hell seemed to symbolize an invincible defense. No matter what kind of attack landed on it, it would turn into streams of hellish flames and be absorbed into the god armor, adding to the aura of sulfur and lava on the hell's white bone armor once again. Simultaneously, the first prince's martial will swept out as he said, "Do you still want to try? Rona, it's true that I didn't expect you to have received the legacy of the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor's waves. However, even if the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor was still alive, he could forget about breaking through my hell's white bone armor. Could it be that you think that you're stronger than the mystic abyss heavenly emperor? The young man called Rona also smiled coldly and said, George Krieg, your Krieg royal family is really shameless. Even a mystic abyss heavenly emperor can't break through it. If he were to really come back to life, the Krieg royal family would probably be the first to prostrate themselves before him. You said that I can't break the Hell's white bone armor, but can you get out of the Hades vault? Anyway, time is accelerated here. I'll just refine you here for 8 to 10 years. I don't believe that you'll be able to hang on forever. Although the threat in Rona's words was very strong, the blue-haired young man, who was hidden in the layers of fire clouds, looked at this scene with a grim countenance. Damn it, isn't this Hell's white bone armor too powerful? I borrowed the powers of the Hades vault and kept on refining him with the flames and pressure in the center of the vault. The destructive prowess every minute is enough to collapse mountains and sever rivers. To think that nothing has happened to him for a total of 20 days? Then he thought of Feng Xingjian, who had yet to appear, and Rona's brows furrowed even tighter. I originally wanted to capture the two of them and refine them together. How could I have known that this Feng Xingjian hasn't made a move yet? Yet the Senluo Six Heavens sword just had to appear at this moment. The first prince wants to get it, and I can't possibly watch as he does so. If this stalemate continues, I won't have any additional power to suppress the Hades ghost dragon and retrieve the Senluo Six Heavens sword. This was the scene that Feng Xingjian saw when he brought the fourth prince and hid in the spatial gaps. Then they looked in the direction where the first prince was pointing and saw a pool of water form from black flames. The entire pool was almost as big as the great western city. Around the pool of water, there were a total of 9 huge green dragons with a length of over 1,000 meters for claws on their bellies and 2 horns on their heads. They lay prostrate on the land of flames. These huge dragons lay there as if they were dead. However, they did not show any signs of rotting or deteriorating. Each scale and each strand of hair on their bodies was very lifelike. It was as if they would wake up at the next moment. On the bodies of the huge dragons, there were a total of 9 huge chains connected to their necks, dragging them all the way into the black pool of water. In the pure black pool of water, the 9 huge chains were pulled taut and then trembled incessantly. It was as if there was something struggling crazily inside. The pool of water, the 9 huge dragons, the thick chains, and the pool of water which kept on creating ripples. This was the scene that Feng Xingjian saw. Simultaneously, the fourth prince pointed to the pool of water and said, "It's in there. I can sense that the Senluo Six Heavens sword is at the bottom of that pool of water." Just as the fourth prince finished saying this, the chains suddenly bent, and the pool of water kept on rising. It was as if a huge monster was about to charge out. Chapter 590. The black pool's undulations grew increasingly greater. At the next moment, a massive red figure darted out abruptly and leaped out of the pool. It was a strange fish that was covered in red scales, had a single horn on its head, and had a face that looked like a human's. The person's face was savage, like that of a vengeful and evil woman, and its eyes were filled with a crimson glow. The huge human-headed fish was about the size of an aircraft carrier. The moment its huge head leaped out of the water, it let out a loud bellow, and the surging power caused it to continue rising higher, as if it was going to leave the pool and fly into the sky. However, the 9 chains passed through its body and were pulled taut when it flew to the highest point, releasing crisp, banging sounds. It made one worry that the chains would break at any moment. Sensing that its body was slowly descending, the human-headed fish opened its mouth and let out a furious bellow of indignation. A rotten and broken tongue stuck out from its huge mouth. On the tongue, there was a huge black coffin that had sunk into the flesh. It was pierced through and bound by countless granules of flesh. It was as if someone had embedded this coffin into the human-headed fish's tongue. The Senluo Six Heavens sword is in there. The fourth princes will swept past Feng Xingjian and Philip at lightning speed. Therefore, the two of them made their moves at the same time. Feng Xingjian, who was under the sudden inspiration, had arrived at the deepest part of the Hades vault. It had indeed arrived at the perfect timing. Not only was the first prince and the mysterious young man, Rona, engaged in a fierce battle, but the human-headed fish had also leaped out of the black pool, opened its mouth, and bellowed furiously, revealing the black coffin on its tongue. Both the first prince and Rona did not have any spare energy to snatch the Sunluo six-heaven sword, at least at this moment. This time, which had not even lasted for a second, was a rare opportunity. Faced with such a rare opportunity, Feng Xingjian and Philip's martial wills mixed together, and their lightning-fast communication was completed in an instant. Then they made their moves in an instant. Instantly, a stream of white light extended out from the fourth prince's body, encompassing the entire body of the human-faced fish. Philip fixed the human-faced fish's body in place and its open mouth. However, at almost the instant he came into contact with the human-headed fish's body, Philip sensed waves of astonishing power bursting forth from its body. Philip felt that he was not suppressing a living creature, but a magnitude 10 earthquake instead. With 30% of his clone's powers, he would probably only be able to suppress it for a few seconds. What kind of monster is this? However, these few seconds were far too long for Feng Xingjian. In less than 1,000th of a second, Feng Xingjian had already appeared on the tongue of the human-faced fish and appeared before the black coffin. He then pierced out with his sword fingers, bringing about streams of dreamlike light and shadows. The infiltrating void sword, light pursuit sword ripples, and all-conquering sword merged into one, and a myriad of sword shadows encompassed the entire black coffin. At the next moment, streams of foul-smelling black blood spurted out from the tongue. Feng Xingjian had gotten tyrant to keep the black coffin into the gates of the netherworld, disappearing completely. Then, with a retreat, Feng Xingjian retreated from the human-faced fish's mouth and returned to his original position. In almost an instant, the human-faced fish had leaped out of the pool, and Feng Xingjian and Philip had joined forces to snatch away the coffin. Everything had happened too quickly. Although it seemed simple, the two of them had unleashed their full powers at the same time, seizing the black coffin in a rare opportunity. When Feng Xingjian returned to his original position, streams of world-shaking killing aura gushed out toward Feng Xingjian. This feeling was as if all living things in the world wanted him dead and wanted to kill him. The first prince and Rona's martial wills interacted at lightning speed. The first prince said in an eerie tone, "We'll talk about the matter between us later. Let's kill Feng Xingjian first and snatch back the Sunluo six-heaven sword. Then we'll fight it out." Young Rona's countenance was savage. "All right, Feng Xingjian, I'm going to tear him into pieces." Just as the two of them finished their exchange at lightning speed and were about to make their moves, the 9 huge dragons that were lying prone on the flaming ground opened their eyes slowly. The human-faced fish that was bound by chains kept on letting out a series of world-shaking and agonizing cries due to the wound on its tongue. Violent powers seethed in the pool, incessantly bringing up many tsunamis that were several hundred meters tall. The 9 chains were pulled taut, creaking incessantly as if they would break at any moment. However, as the coffin was taken away, the wound on the human-faced fish's tongue got increasingly bigger. Streams of foul-smelling black blood splattered everywhere, as if a rainstorm had descended from the sky. As the black blood continued to splatter onto the bodies of the 9 huge dragons, the huge dragons that seemed to be in deep sleep started to tremble slightly. Their opened eyes became increasingly gleaming, as if they would really wake up at any moment. "Let's go." Almost at the moment they got the coffin, Feng Xingjian had already returned to the fourth prince's side. Grabbing onto the fourth prince's shoulder, he wanted to leave. However, with a single step, the space trembled. After darting out for over 100 kilometers, the entire space started to become chaotic, and distorted. Waves of will that could wipe out yin and yang, reverse good and evil, and overturn right and wrong drilled into Feng Xingjian's and the fourth prince's brains. It was as if they wanted to completely muddle up their consciousness and change their personalities. Simultaneously, the surrounding space had already turned into a spiral, locking the two of them in void space. It was the ancient path of Hell's ultimate technique, mortal world reversal. At the same time as the first prince made his move, the mysterious young man, Rona, who had inherited the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor's waves legacy from the 7 great clans that had been cultivating in seclusion for 200 years, also made his move. Under his control, countless fire clouds came pressing down from the sky, gushing into the first prince's mortal world reversal. Crimson red light filled up every single spiral, and the violent high temperature seemed to want to incinerate everything. Streams of fire dragons encompassed Fong Xinjiang completely, and the high temperature of several 100,000 degrees heated up the air into a viscous plasma. The spiral space seemed to have turned into a land of death. Fong Xinjiang, hand over the Sunluo 6 Heaven Sword, and I'll spare your life. Simultaneously, the abnormalities in the pool continued. As the Hades ghost dragons woke up one after another, all of them looked toward the human-headed fish that kept on struggling and leaping on the surface of the pool. At the next moment, the 9 dragons moved in unison, charging toward the human-headed fish. A look of horror immediately appeared in the man-headed fish's crazed face. Just as it was about to escape, a massive dragon claw had already descended from the sky, crushing the man-headed fish's face and gouging out a large piece of flesh. Black blood scattered in all directions, and a pungent stench encompassed the area within a range of 100 lis. This made the 9 Hades ghost dragons even more frenzied. They were like mini zombies that had a thirst for blood as they bit down on the human-headed fish crazily. A rain of blood accompanied the human-headed fish's agonizing cries that were getting weaker and weaker. As the last bit of its tail was swallowed by a Hades ghost dragon, the entire human-headed fish that was the size of an aircraft carrier was completely dismembered. The Hades ghost dragon that had engulfed the human-headed fish seemed to have swelled up, emitting a faint, eerie glow all over, as if it had really come alive. Then the 9 Hades ghost dragons turned their gazes toward where Fong Xinjiang was. Chapter 591. The First Prince's Mortal World Reversal. The mysterious young man Rona, controlling the powers of the Hades Vault, and the gazes of the 9 Hades ghost dragons who had truly awakened. Fong Xinjiang and the others seemed to have reached the most critical moment. Just then, Philip and Fong Xinjiang also unleashed their powers that could truly allow them to dominate the world. George, it's been a very long time since we've sparred. Let me see how much you've improved over the past few years. A light figure that was encompassed by white light slowly walked out from the 4th prince's body. His seemingly material martial will swept through the space, as if it could calm down all attacks. As Philip made his appearance, a myriad of white light encompassed a large half of the sky. The profoundness of the universal truth longsword was completely unleashed by Philip, and waves of intense, as if he was the only one in the world, descended from the sky. At the beginning, it was just a dot, but the dot rapidly expanded into a sphere-shaped space. All of the flames, explosions, high temperatures, spirals, and distortions were completely repelled. The flames were extinguished, and the space was calmed down. Under the universal truth longsword, everything seemed to have returned to its original state, once again under the god of universal truth's unification. Old man, you dare to go against me? The first prince's countenance changed, as if he had expected Philip's appearance. In an instant, he performed another overturned hell explosively, smashing out toward Philip with a power that seemed to be able to cause the world to collapse and the mortal world to reverse. It was as if the first prince wanted to shatter void space and create a hole in the Hades vault. George, you didn't receive the legacy of the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor. Clearly, you're not someone favored by the world's destiny. You don't have a share in this Sunluo 6 Heaven Sword. Are you still going to go against the heavens? The universal truth longsword's sphere-shaped domain expanded once again, blocking out the overturned hell's palm. Amidst world-shaking explosions, the space where the two of them clashed became chaotic and distorted. All physical particles disintegrated, leaving behind only the most complete heat energy. It was as if they had returned to the primordial world of ancient times, when planets had yet to be born and continents had yet to appear. The world was a state of nothingness. The battle between the two deity-level experts was already this ferocious, even though it was just their clones. The first prince let out a cold snort, and his martial will exploded, turning into waves of lava aura that scattered across the sky. I will soon be the ruler of the empire, ruling over all living beings in the world. With a single word, the world will change, and I represent the will of heaven and the will of the people. You got greedy at the sight of wealth and coveted the great treasures of the predecessors. Could it be that you want to twist the will of heaven and confuse right and wrong? Accompanied by a martial will that was like hell, the first prince struck out with both palms simultaneously. One move overturned hell, and the other, mortal world reversal, pressed down explosively at the same time. It was as if he wanted to smash the mortal world and hell out at the same time, colliding the two different worlds together and bringing about a great calamity that could destroy the world. Ha ha ha, George, you're exactly the same as your father. Your mouth can distort black and white, obliterating good and evil. It's no wonder that you're so suited for the martial arts of the ancient path of hell. Philip's martial will did not show any signs of weakness, and streams of light swords flashed in his hands. The universal truth longsword's basic sword technique, the holy sea of truth, had been unleashed to an extreme by Philip. With a single sword attack, many spherical spaces filled up an area of several hundred meters, almost encompassing every single physical particle in the air. All of the physical particles were disconnected, and the entire world seemed to have once again returned to how it was when the universe had just been born. It was difficult for all physical changes to occur, and it was difficult for any attacks to be of any effect. While Philip was holding back the first prince for now, young Rona was unwilling to let things go. He controlled the powers of the Hades vault, bringing along a myriad of fire dragons and blasting out toward Feng Xingjian. Within a range of 1,000 lis, the sea of flames in the Hades vault became agitated. They surrounded Feng Xingjian like a black hole, wanted to wipe out his existence completely. Right now, Rona was like the legendary sun god. Layers of flames that caused the scorching space to distort encompassed his body, protecting him and the young lady. It was as if he was controlling all the flames in the world, wanting to burn Feng Xingjian to death completely. Feng Xingjian, the Senluo Six Heavens sword, isn't something you can think about. Hand it over immediately, and I can let you off. Oh, by the time young Rona reacted, Feng Xingjian had already appeared behind him. The dark golden world engulfing battle god armor encompassed his entire body, exuding waves of golden will. Tyrant had already completed his fusion. After engulfing the two divine level magic prince warriors and attaining 4 tiers of perfection, waves of power gushed out toward Feng Xingjian like mountains and seas. The power of over 2 billion physical particles burst forth from the two of them, and the piercing light could scorch anyone's eyes. The auras of over 10,000 specialty seeds rose up, causing the surrounding space to distort as Feng Xingjian moved. Is that so? At the next moment, a huge, unadorned palm that brought along endless power tore through the flames and pressed down on young Rona's head. Rona's vision suddenly turned black, and a violent power descended from the sky, pressing down on his entire body. It was as if the sky had collapsed. Then Feng Xingjian's other hand thrust out fiercely, and a power that seemed as if it wanted to pierce through the heavens burst forth. It brought along the 3-sword intents of the infiltrating void, light pursuit, and all-conquering. In that instant, light and shadow connected together. An immeasurable amount of sword force came smashing down, tearing through the layers of flames and piercing through young Rona's waist, completely destroying both of his kidneys. An expression of intense pain and fury appeared on Rona's face. Endless flames gathered on his hands, and it was as if 2 suns were rising above his hands. They unleashed endless astral rays, heavenly thunders, and terrestrial magnetism forces, and then smashed out fiercely toward Fang Xingjian. The power of this attack was like a comet striking the ground, or a sun descending from the sky, scorching the earth. It was as if even the will of humans would be completely vaporized. It sent Fang Xingjian, who was covered in golden armor, flying out, as if he was melting in the high temperature. However, amidst the light and high temperature of the two small suns, Fang Xingjian disappeared for less than 1,000th of a second. Then the huge palm once again reached out from the scorching light, grabbing onto the young man's skull. Then, Fang Xingjian's 5 fingers emitted endless sword light, encompassing the pitch-black sword edge formed by the Heaven's Volition sword intent. They were like 5 unparalleled flying swords, and each of his 5 fingers performed the sword of rebirth, infiltrating void, all-conquering, light pursuit sword ripples, and instant sword respectively. With a single palm, the 5 swords were unleashed simultaneously, crushing young Rona's head and causing it to explode. It exploded into a bloody mist. A series of attacks happened in a short instant, and the young lady at the side let out an astonished cry. The auras of over 800 specialty seeds throughout her body rose up, and each of them seemed to take on the form of a small person, taking on the appearance of various heavenly gods. All of them punched out toward Fang Xingjian simultaneously. It was the unrivaled great martial art of the Tianmen leader, who was one of the 8 divine-level experts who had founded the country, the Central Heavens. It was a terrifying martial art that used humans to form a country and power to become a god, forging one's physical body into the legendary heavens and divine country. It was a place where countless heavenly gods gathered. Chapter 592. Faced with this strange martial technique, Fang Xingjian's gaze flickered slightly. However, although this martial technique was exquisite, the young lady's cultivation was far too weak. She was not even a demigod. Fang Xingjian's gaze narrowed, and it was as if sword light was flashing in void space. Just a slight glare from him caused the young lady to tremble intensely, and all her powers to dissipate completely. The 800 heavenly gods that had appeared instantly crumbled, and she was unable to muster up any battle prowess at all. However, the young lady had just lost her battle prowess when the 9 Hades ghost dragons surrounded her, accompanied by loud, clanking sounds of chains. "Intruder, who are you? Return the 6 heavens sword to us. That's the 6 heavens sword of our 9 brothers. Damn it, to think that you dare to steal it. I'm going to eat you up." Waves of powerful martial will kept on emitting from the 9 Hades ghost dragons. To think that they still had consciousness and could communicate. However, their words were childish and naive, giving off the feeling that their brains were not working well. Simultaneously, young Rona had already started to regenerate his brain, and the injuries to his physical body seemed to be able to recover at any moment. Seeing the 9 Hades ghost dragons charging over, Fang Xingjian's gaze narrowed. With a wave of his hand, for streams of resplendent light soared into the sky. Celestial eradication, sword formation. As the 4 streams of light swept toward the Hades ghost dragons, endless killing intent descended from the sky, and eerie sword cheese filled up the entire space. Infiltrating void, light pursuit, all-conquering, and instant each took up 4 positions, completely surrounding the 9 Hades ghost dragons. Then the 4 short swords each activated the infiltrating void sword, the light pursuit sword ripples, the all-conquering sword, and the instant sword. They charged out toward the great formation with great momentum. At this moment, within the sword formation, it was as if there were 4 Fang Xingjian who were not wearing any equipment performing sword techniques at the same time. How astonishing would the prowess unleashed be? The eerie sword cheese seemed as if they were going to tear through void space and wipe out the mortal world. Invisible sword forces, sword ripples, and sword marks swept through every inch of void space, as if they were going to kill all living things in the world. Each of these 9 hateful dragons was 1,000 meters long, and their physical strength was enough to move mountains and overturn seas. Almost every one of them had the power of a demigod with 5 tiers of perfection. They could be said to be existences at the pinnacle below the divine level that the mystic abyss heavenly emperor had specially left behind in the depths of the Hades vault, endlessly absorbing all sorts of energy over countless years to nurture them. Moreover, all of them possessed the potential to advance to the divine level. It was just that he wouldn't be able to advance to the god realm if he stayed in the Hades vault. Once he left, it wouldn't take long for him to advance to the god realm. However, there was still a clear difference between those with 5 tiers of perfection. Compared to Feng Xingjian's over 10,000 specialty seeds, the 5 swords of the battle god, and the celestial eradication sword formation, they were far too inferior. Seething sword light flashed in the sword formation, as if it had turned into an ocean of swords. The 9 hateful dragons let out world-shaking roars as their flesh and blood splattered all over their bodies. They kept on being torn apart, crushed, and slashed by all sorts of sword marks, sword forces, and sword ripples. They were like 9 chickens that had been sent into a meat grinder, completely suppressed by the celestial eradication sword formation. After releasing the celestial eradication sword formation to suppress the 9 hateful dragons, Feng Xingjian was about to grab hold of young Rona and kill him. However, he discovered that Rona's silhouette had suddenly disappeared, as if he had merged into the Hades vault and disappeared completely. Feng Xingjian was about to grab the young lady when she disappeared as well. Feng Xingjian, as expected of an unrivaled genius in sword arts. If we weren't in the Hades vault, I'd probably really be killed by you. However, since we're in the Hades vault, this is your misfortune. Let me tell you, even if you were to hand over the Sunluo 6 Heaven sword now, it'd be useless. Young Rona's will, which was filled with hatred, viciousness, and killing intent, kept on ringing out in the world. Not only am I going to take back the Sunluo 6 Heaven sword, but I'm also going to take away your sword arts talent and absorb your blood essence. With your power, I'll be able to attain the divine level when I get out. Then, with the Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor's treasures, it won't be long before I become the strongest expert amongst the younger generation, or even the entire empire. And you're just a stepping stone for me. A stepping stone, do you understand? At the next moment, endless fire clouds came gushing forth, and Feng Xingjian's body sank abruptly. Waves of gravitational forces kept on pressing down on his body, as if wanting to tear his physical body into dust. There were all sorts of fire rays, high temperatures, and explosions coming toward him from all directions. At this moment, it was as if Feng Xingjian had become the enemy of the entire world. Feng Xingjian leaped a few times consecutively, traversing a distance of several hundred kilometers. However, he was still unable to break away from the omnipresent attacks. At the same time, he unleashed his heaven perception to an extreme, and his martial will kept on sweeping out in all directions. However, he was unable to find any traces of the young man Rona and young lady. It was as if they had truly merged into the world, becoming a part of the Hades vault. Warning signs kept on rising in Feng Xingjian's heart. His sudden inspiration senses told him that something extremely dangerous was about to happen. Therefore, he did not stay any longer. With a flash, he retreated back into the spatial gaps. He saw the 4th prince standing there with his coffin open. He was holding onto a dark green longsword with a strange shape, and his eyes were filled with a faint light. He looked at Feng Xingjian's body and spoke in an extremely deep and cold voice. Who are you? The words going berserk appeared in Feng Xingjian's mind. He suddenly recalled that this Sunluo 6 Heaven sword was the Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor's personal weapon, so it would definitely contain the remnant consciousness of the Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor. Moreover, the 4th prince was not even at the divine level, so how could he possibly go up against the remnant consciousness of that extremely powerful person? Of course, this was not the true will left behind by the Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor. Instead, It was a fake personality that had been formed after the fourth prince carried the Sinluo Six Heaven Sword for a long period of time and left behind a portion of the information in it. It was merely a fake that had some of the mystic, abyss, heavenly emperor's memories. However, this was still no small matter. At almost the instant he sensed it, Fang Xingjian had already tapped out with a finger. He used his deathly sword intent, the Heaven's Volition sword intent, and the golden will on the world-engulfing battle god armor to attack simultaneously, instantly wiping out the remnant information on the fourth prince's body. The fourth prince's gaze instantly regained clarity. Xingjian, what's wrong? Leave quickly. In the spatial gaps in the surroundings, countless wind, thunder, and fire clouds seethed. Young Rona borrowed the powers of the Hades vault and started to attack Fang Xingjian, who was in the spatial gaps. Fang Xingjian pulled the fourth prince along and left, darting toward Philip. Let's go, Philip. In that instant, a myriad of sword light burst out from Philip's body, shooting out toward the first prince. Meanwhile, his consciousness darted into the fourth prince's body. Thinking of leaving? The first prince let out a cold laugh, and the overturned hell and mortal world reversal were unleashed simultaneously. Stay behind. Young Rona let out an explosive bellow that seemed to shake the world. Endless fire clouds formed a huge palm that blotted out the sky, slapping out toward Fang Xingjian. To think that even Fang Xingjian would not be able to instantly accelerate out of the palm that was several hundred kilometers in size. With a movement of his sword fingers, the four-short sword from the celestial eradication sword formation darted out continuously, blocking before the first prince and young Rona. Chapter 593. Faced with the celestial eradication sword formation blocking his path, the first prince did not even take a look at it. An overturned hell descended from the skies, and the space within a range of several leagues was stretched and distorted. The first prince was about to smash the sword formation head-on. However, young Rona did not care at all. Fang Xingjian was unable to locate his true body. He circled around the celestial eradication sword formation and continued to give chase to Fang Xingjian's group. However, the prowess of the celestial eradication sword formation far exceeded the first prince's expectations. The four short swords unleashed a myriad of sword light. It was as if four Fang Xingjian had performed sword arts at the same time, clashing fiercely against the first prince's overturned hell. Amidst the world-shaking explosions, the overturned hell's palm was unable to suppress it, and there was even the danger of it being pushed back. A hint of fury flashed in the first prince's eyes, and with an explosive bellow, the clone that was formed from the hell's white bone armor seemed to swell up. Its size suddenly doubled in size, and it looked like a towering mountain. The Yama sacred physique was unleashed to an extreme, exuding endless pressure. His other palm tore through the air and grabbed out, encompassing layers of seemingly material martial will. In that instant, another mortal world reversal burst out. The two attacks came pressing down, and the celestial eradication sword formation was instantly torn apart and came to a stop. However, it only came to a stop for an instant. The four short swords flashed with a dazzling glow, and the sword intents within them self-detonated. Terrifying sword cheese covered a range of 100 leagues. Everything was torn apart, slashed, and crushed. The first prince's two overturned hell attacks were also neutralized. However, when the sword cheese collided against the hell's white bone armor, it was like an ant trying to shake a tree. The first prince did not even take a single step back. The celestial eradication sword formation was completely destroyed, and the four long swords that Fang Xingjian had gone through great effort to condense had turned into nothingness. However, the first prince could not feel happy at all. It was because there were no traces of Fang Xingjian. Young Rona had even left in pursuit of Fang Xingjian. The Hades ghost dragons were slightly slower. They had only chased after Fang Xingjian for a distance of over 300 kilometers when they were in the endless Hades vault. The first prince was able to see them with a single glance. These 9 spectra dragons are all at the peak of the 5th tier. Not bad. I don't know if Feng Xingjian can catch up, so it's better to take these 9 ghost dragons first. Therefore, he turned his head and looked at the 9 Hades ghost dragons. He took a few steps forward and used Overturn Hell on them. The 9 Hades ghost dragons let out strange cackles and instantly formed a strange formation, emitting a mysterious aura. The 9 dragons connected their heads to their tails, turning into a huge wheel that kept spinning in the void. It was as if they wanted to merge all the humans, living creatures, good and evil, human emotions, and wealth into this reincarnation cycle. Samsara, samsara, samsara. In void space, the sounds of mysterious incantations filled the air. Right now, the 9 Hades ghost dragons were forming the 6th transmigration formation that the mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor had created. It was a great formation that could absorb all sorts of attacks into the formation and reflect them. It was known as the #1 defensive formation in the Jade Dynasty. When the overturned hell was slapped into the formation, it was like a clay ox entering a swamp. A short moment later, an overturned hell that was exactly the same rose up and slapped toward the first prince under his astonished gaze. However, as he was wearing the hell's white bone armor, the first prince did not bother to dodge any attacks. He allowed the overturned hell to hit him, not moving at all. It was as if a cool breeze had just brushed past his face. Simultaneously, the 9 huge dragons bellowed furiously. "What are you trying to do?" "We're going to chase after the person who stole the Sunluo 6 Heaven Sword." "What has it got to do with you?" "What has it got to do with you?" Noisy. The first prince let out a cold snort and clenched his fists tightly. He stepped in a void space, and an extremely dense martial will that was black all over his body rose up. He was like a demon lord that had come from hell as he took great strides toward the 6th transmigration formation. "The 9 of you, submit to me immediately." As he spoke, the first prince struck out with both fists. It was as if the heavens were collapsing and the earth was splitting, as if hell had descended. "Otherwise, I'll just crush your formation and peel off your tendons to make good dragon armor." In that instant, it was as if there were countless thunderbolts exploding in the world. The weather changed, and the heavens were collapsing and the earth was splitting. Although the 9 ghost dragons absorbed the first prince's attacks time and time again, the reflected attacks had no effect on the hell's white bone armor at all. On the contrary, under the repeated explosive attacks, the ghost dragon's tendons and flesh turned numb, and their vital energy and blood seethed. It was as if their bodies were going to explode. Both parties fought further and further away from the Hades vault, rolling on the ground as they fought. At the same time, with the disappearance of the Sunluo 6 Heaven Sword, the black flames on the flaming ground in the center of the Hades vault gradually became more and more active. They pulsed like a beating heart, emitting an extremely dangerous aura. Without the Sunluo 6 Heaven's sword suppressing the formation, the Hades vault was about to collapse. This was also the reason why Feng Xingjian had sensed danger. On the other side, Feng Xingjian and the others were dashing at high speed in the Hades vault. With each step Feng Xingjian took, the air would explode and fill up the sky. Feng Xingjian's speed had surpassed 150 times that of supersonic speed, and the air surrounding him was compressed in layers. It was as hard as steel, exuding piercing red light under the incessant friction. Feng Xingjian's entire body was enduring the extremely high pressure brought about by the high speed. With each breath he took in and each breath he exhaled, the endless energy from ether particles, heavenly thunders, and terrestrial magnetism forces and astral rays would be absorbed into his ether organs, continuously replenishing the depletion of his physical strength. The 4th prince was grabbed behind him, and it was as if he was going to fall apart. If it was not because Feng Xingjian had blocked off most of the atmospheric pressure and he had the attributes of a demigod, the 4th prince would have been slashed into minced meat by the air resistance. However, despite this extreme speed, Rona was still in hot pursuit. Behind Feng Xingjian, a myriad of fire clouds came gushing forth, even turning into Rona's big face as he continued to chase after Feng Xingjian. Feng Xingjian, you won't be able to escape. The world trembled, and many rings of fire came crashing down. However, they were torn apart by Feng Xingjian's sword cheese with a tap of his finger. However, Feng Xingjian was unable to attack Rona's real body at all, and the power of the Hades vault was endless. Therefore, he had no intention of staying behind to fight. He continued to increase his speed and charge forth, dodging the attacks that were coming from everywhere. However, as Rona continued to charge forth, he did not care about his limits at all. He continued to absorb and condense the fire clouds, high temperature, and high heat. Even though waves of intense pain were coming from his brain and his consciousness's computing abilities had reached a limit, he still did not stop. It was clear that he was bent on killing Feng Xingjian. The fire giant chasing after Feng Xingjian grew increasingly stronger, more powerful, and more powerful. Its speed also grew increasingly faster. It was like a nuclear warhead that continued to grow in power, exuding an aura that made one's heart palpitate increasingly. Simultaneously, Feng Xingjian asked, "Fourth Prince, is there anything left behind by the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor in the Sunluo Six Heaven Sword? Is there anything that can help?" Chapter 594. The one who answered Feng Xingjian's question was Philip. That won't do. His consciousness has fallen into a deep sleep. It seems to be communicating with the Sunluo Six Heaven Sword, completely receiving the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor's legacy. Feng Xingjian frowned and suddenly sank deep into his consciousness. He unleashed his heaven's perception to its extreme, sensing the physical particles in his body. However, he did not stop there. He continued to go deeper and deeper, heading toward an even more microscopic domain. Tyrant, take control of my physical body and escape for now. I'll try to strive for the divine level. Feng Xingjian was not a kind person. He would not retaliate, even though he was being chased. He started to run while attempting to strive for the divine level, preparing to counterattack. In order to strive for the divine level, one had to obtain information from the microscopic world. One had to go deep into the microscopic world, down to the level of ether particles, break through the world's passageways, and obtain divine level information. One could attempt to strive for the divine level at just one tier of perfection. However, Feng Xingjian had held back until 5 tiers of perfection. He had also used the Mountainous Seas Book of the Way to attain 10,000 specialty seeds, used nuclear reactions to attain 1.08 billion physical particles, and reached 5 tiers of perfection. He had also picked up the sword techniques from various sects and factions, and his cultivation was unfathomable. Now that he had started to strive for the divine level, he felt as if success would come naturally when the conditions were right. Feng Xingjian sank his consciousness deep into the microscopic world, instantly arriving at the level of physical particles. He saw the 1.08 billion physical particles in his body. He then continued to sink deeper into the physical particles. He saw that there were still structures in the physical particles. They were countless strange particles that were exchanging with each other, as well as strange waves. However, these were still not ether particles. Therefore, Feng Xingjian continued to sink deeper. As he did so, the entire world became different to his eyes. He could no longer see any particles, only countless bubbles that undulated up and down. Each bubble seemed to contain various destructive auras. He casually entered a bubble and once again went even deeper into the microscopic world. This time, the world before him changed once again. The bubbles disappeared, and so did the colors. It was as if even time and space had disappeared. At the microscopic level, all physical laws were completely different from the macroscopic world. Experiencing this change personally, countless comprehensions suddenly flashed in Feng Xingjian's mind. All sorts of connections between the microscopic world and the macroscopic world kept on seething in his mind. There was no light, no darkness, no time, and no space. Feng Xingjian could only feel that he seemed to have arrived at an invisible ocean. Everything was formless, and when the scale of space was magnified to such an extent, it was as if there were no longer any physical structures. Only waves of energy undulated up and down. What next? Feng Xingjian sensed that his heaven's perception seemed to have reached an extreme, but he was unable to detect any auras of the world passageways. What Feng Xingjian did not know was that the Hades vault he was currently in was different from Miracle World. There were no world passageways at the bottom of the microscopic world here, and there was no way to strive for the divine level. It was also because Feng Xingjian did not know that he continued to work hard, venturing deeper, deeper, and deeper. He wanted to continue entering a deeper level of the microscopic world, entering an even smaller scale of space to search for the existence of the world passageways. On the other side, Tyrant let out a few loud bellows, but Feng Xingjian did not reply. Looking at the fire giant that was getting increasingly bigger and getting closer to him, Tyrant let out an enraged curse and increased his speed to escape crazily. However, his cultivation was much weaker than Feng Xingjian's. Even though he was controlling Feng Xingjian's physical body, his speed and ability to dodge were greatly reduced. He would occasionally be struck by the fire clouds, and he had to rely on the world-engulfing battle god armor to barely fend them off. Hiding in the layers of fire clouds, young Rona looked at Feng Xingjian, who was fleeing like a fly, and laughed maniacally. Run, run, run with all your might. Feng Xingjian, I'll see how long you can run for. He grabbed across space with his 5 fingers, and a myriad of fire dragons descended from the sky, gushing out toward Feng Xingjian. Amidst the continuous explosions, both Tyrant and the 4th Prince were sent flying in all directions. They were only able to fend off the attacks with the help of the world-engulfing battle god armor and Philip's powers. Looking at Feng Xingjian's current state, young Rona felt an endless sense of exhilaration rise in his heart. He felt as if his cultivation level was about to rise. Feng Xingjian, this is what you get for offending me. You don't have the capabilities, yet you snatched something that you shouldn't have. I'll first destroy that lousy armor of yours. As he spoke, countless fire clouds darted before Tyrant, forming a towering firewall. Tyrant plunged into it, feeling as if he was a roasted pig that had barged into an oven. Even with the protection of the world-engulfing battle god armor, he still felt as if his physical body had been heated up to over 80 degrees Celsius. Thankfully, it was impossible for the other party to summon too many fire clouds to block Tyrant in such a short amount of time. Finally, Tyrant managed to dash out of the firewall with a bang. Philip said solemnly, "This guy has been strengthened by the Hades vault, and his abilities here are on par with my actual body. Moreover, there's almost an endless supply of energy, and we can't find his actual body to attack. We must make the best use of our time to escape." Tyrant said helplessly, "I'm just afraid that we'll be cooked before we can escape." Right now, Feng Xingjian was attempting to strive for the divine level, while the 4th Prince had received the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor's legacy. Both of their physical bodies were controlled by Tyrant and Philip respectively, and they were fleeing. Looking at the two of them fleeing at high speed, young Rona smiled coldly in his heart. "Do you think that you'll be able to escape?" The two of them chased and fled at full speed. The speed at which they were going back was over 10 times faster than when they had come. After advancing for a few days, they had continuously fled through 9 levels and finally arrived at the outermost layer of the Hades vault. However, right now, Tyrant's condition was extremely bad. The world-engulfing battle god armor he was wearing had turned into a tattered state. There were charred marks and shattered scales everywhere, and the divine level consciousness from the 4-eyed heavenly winged beast was extremely weak. It was like a candle that would be extinguished at any moment. Tyrant's actual body, which he was controlling, and the 4th Prince were both covered in blood and charred areas. Even the white light that Philip had used to protect the 4th Prince was only left with a faint layer. After all, Philip had only used 30% of his martial will's power. Although the world-engulfing battle god armor was a divine remains equipment. It was impossible for it to just take a beating and not retaliate, suffering from Rona's crazy attacks for a few days consecutively. It could be said that it was a miracle that the world-engulfing battle god armor had been able to last until now. After being chased by Rona, both of their conditions had reached the lowest point. If it could be said that they had been able to exchange blows with the fire giant at the beginning, then now that they had been weakened, they were no longer a match for the fire giant. Chapter 595. Along the way, Rona continued to control and absorb the fire clouds in the Hades vault. He had already formed a flame giant that was several thousand meters tall. His entire body was so solid that it seemed as if it had a physical form, and just getting close to it would be enough to burn everything in the world. If he were to go to Miracle World, he would probably be able to vaporize the great western city completely with just a stomp. It's over. The two of you can die here. The flame giant was like a legendary god, striking out across space with a huge palm that could send the entire street flying. Seething flames gushed forth, and it was as if thousands or hundreds of nuclear bombs had exploded. Faced with Rona's attack, both Tyrant and Philip unleashed their ultimate moves. God Perishing Palm, Universal, Truth, Longsword. Their martial wills mixed with their physical strength and energy gushed forth. However, they could not take a single blow from Rona's attack. The two of them were sent flying over 100 kilometers away, creating streams of air currents like fighter jets. The world-engulfing battle god armor on Tyrant let out an agonizing cry and broke down completely, exploding into countless light flames. This level 32 divine remains equipment was completely destroyed. The white light that Philip had turned into also disappeared with the wind. This expert, who was one of the Empire's 10 great divine level experts, had finally depleted all of his clone's powers. Seeing the state the two of them were in, great elation flashed in Rona's eyes. He controlled the flame giant's palm to grab out toward Feng Xingjian's and the fourth prince's bodies. Just then, hints of indifference appeared in Feng Xingjian's eyes. It was as if all his emotions had completely disappeared in this instant, and he had become a high and mighty heavenly law. You're finally awake. Feng Xingjian looked toward a space several tens of kilometers away and then got Tyrant to grab out the thunder-permeating spear from the gates of the Netherworld. This divine remains equipment that the divine Sun Emperor had brought along with him came from the fifth prince. Ever since he had gotten it, Feng Xingjian had not really used it. However, right now he was holding it in his hand and channeling endless sword intense and energy into it. The entire thunder-permeating spear flashed with piercing light. Then the specialty seeds and physical particles on Feng Xingjian's body exploded simultaneously. The thunder-permeating spear instantly disappeared and pierced into the flame giant's palm. It's useless. You think you can stop me? Rona choked halfway through his words. It was because he realized that the thunder-penetrating spear was indeed unable to stop him. However, under the pressure of his power and Feng Xingjian's power, the thunder-penetrating spear's body started to crack and explode. Piercing light encompassed the sky, and the huge explosion temporarily stopped Rona's attack. Feng Xingjian also took this opportunity to dash out. He arrived at a spot where he sensed with his sudden inspiration that there was a chance of survival. In an instant, both his and the fourth prince's figures completely disappeared from the Hades vault. After losing the world-engulfing battle god armor and thunder-penetrating spear, self-detonating the celestial eradication sword formation, depleting 30% of Philip's martial will, and sustaining serious injuries, Feng Xingjian and the others finally exited the Hades vault. Rona let out a furious bellow and revealed his true form. He darted in the direction where Feng Xingjian had disappeared. The young lady beside him advised, "Brother, we can't chase anymore. Once we leave the Hades vault, our strength would drop too much. It's too dangerous." "No way." Rona turned back, looking like a gambler who had lost a bet. His eyes were bloodshot. "If we can't catch up to Feng Xingjian this time around, It'll be the same as us not getting anything and losing everything. Now that they've gotten their hands on the Sunluo 6 Heaven Sword, we're even less of a match for them. Moreover, I've stripped them of their armor, destroyed their weapons, and severely injured them. If we head out now, I'll still be able to deal with them with my own abilities. Looking at the state her elder brother was in, the young lady understood that it would be useless no matter what she said. She could only sigh and dash out with the young man. Judging from her heart, she felt that what Rona had said was right. After several consecutive days of full-powered attacks, the other party had been reduced to their weakest state. If they did not seize the opportunity to defeat the other party, then with the powers that Feng Xingjian had displayed and the Sunluo 6 Heaven Sword, they would probably never have the chance to defeat him again. Elsewhere, the moment Feng Xingjian darted out of the Hades vault and returned to Miracle World, a hint of comprehension flashed in his eyes. As expected, after striving for the divine level in the microscopic world for a few days and nights without succeeding, Feng Xingjian started to suspect if this had anything to do with the Hades vault. However, although he had not succeeded, striving for the divine level for a few consecutive days and nights had given him a deep understanding of the microscopic world. Right now, the moment he came out, he could sense the difference between the two worlds. You guys hide. Therefore, a layer of glow flashed on his body, and Tyron bounced out from his body. Tyron's entire body was in a bloody mess. Feng Xingjian, who had been protected closely by Tyron, was also injured, but he was in a much better state. Feng Xingjian darted up into the sky, and the physical strength throughout his body burst out explosively, turning into waves of martial will and charging out into his body. Physical particles, the insides of the physical particles, various microscopic particles, and various waves came to an invisible world, to energy tides. Violent powers penetrated deep into Feng Xingjian's body layer by layer, smashing into a certain hidden spot in his body. Once again, arriving at the lowest level of the microscopic world, Feng Xingjian could sense that in the energy tides, each of the bubbles that splattered out seemed to contain the aura of another world. Go! All the powers in Feng Xingjian's body smashed out toward one of the bubbles. The powers of a person with 5 tiers of perfection were extremely powerful, and they blasted open the door to the world's passageway effortlessly. Then they charged out with Feng Xingjian's will. There seemed to be a bang ringing out in void space, and Feng Xingjian felt as if he had arrived in a strange world. Endless amounts of information kept on merging into his martial will. However, he did not stop. Instead, he continued to advance, charge, and charge. He felt as if he was charging out endlessly in a pitch-black tunnel. Endless amounts of information flashed in the tunnel. It seemed to be the profoundness of the world, the truth of the universe, containing information about the countless microscopic worlds, physical structures, and multivariate universes. As the information continued to merge into his martial will, many choices for the third transition jobs appeared in his mind. God of Sword Arts, Starry Sea Overlord, Chaos Heavenly Punishment, Heavenly Calamity Chairman, Emperor of the 5 Dimensions. As Feng Xingjian ventured deeper, more and more powerful divine-level jobs flashed before him. In the physical world, Feng Xingjian's physical body also continued to deplete its powers as he charged out. He became thinner and weaker at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye, becoming shorter. His physical body continued to be depleted. Not enough. Still not enough. Chapter 596. Feng Xingjian greedily absorbed the endless knowledge. He knew that the deeper he delved, the more he would absorb, and the stronger he would become at the divine level. Otherwise, why would he have needed to reach 5 tiers of perfection? He was now filled with motivation to charge forward. The Purgatory's head? This is the aura of the ancient path of hell. Is this the first prince's job? This is the Netherworld Lord? I can sense the aura of the Hades vault here. Could this be the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor's job? Sun Prince? It's said that this is the Divine Sun Emperor's 3rd transition job. Countless legendary characters' jobs kept on appearing before Feng Xingjian. After the Sun Prince appeared, the Chaotic Spiral, Time Overlord, 100 Years Sovereign, Ghost-Eyed Netherworld, and finally, Salvation appeared one after another. Each of them exuded an aura that would make one tremble in fear, as if they had reached some sort of extreme. However, Feng Xingjian did not stop. He continued to charge forward, continuing to delve deeper. Very soon, no more divine-level jobs appeared. Feng Xingjian's martial will had unknowingly reached a depth that no one in the history of Miracle World had ever reached. Is this the limit? Feng Xingjian no longer sensed any divine-level jobs to choose from. He was contemplating whether he should transition into one of the 5 jobs he had just taken on. Just then, Feng Xingjian's gaze narrowed. Since he had already reached this level, he might as well push on and reach his limits. However, he did not turn back and continued to advance. After traversing a distance that was twice the distance he had just traversed, everything in the tunnel had become grotesque. All sorts of information gushed into Feng Xingjian's brain, but he was no longer able to understand even 1 kilobyte of information. Finally, Feng Xingjian sensed waves of weakness. It was as if he had gathered all of his powers together to attack. At this stage, he had already reached his limit. Just as he was about to stop, another God-class choice appeared in front of him. Eternal Sword Master. Simultaneously, to the outside world, Feng Xingjian's exploration of the world's passageway seemed to have only lasted for an instant. After Feng Xingjian sent Tyrant flying out from his body, Tyrant grabbed the 4th prince and left rapidly. In the blink of an eye, they had run several tens of kilometers away and landed in the dense forest on the ground. This place was not like the spacious skies in the Hades vault, where one could see hundreds or even thousands of kilometers with a single glance. Instead, it was filled with undulating mountains and endless tropical rainforests. For Tyrant to dash into the rainforest with the 4th prince, it would take too much time for experts below the divine level to find them. In less than 0.1 seconds after Tyrant hit himself, Rona and the young lady had already dashed out. The auras of 800 streams of specialty seeds rose from the young lady's bodies, turning into 800 heavenly gods that were like light figures. They looked extremely majestic, just like the legendary divine country. Next to the young lady, Rona's aura was even more terrifying. Waves of perilous aura soared into the sky from his body, and it was as if he had turned into the netherworld. The auras of close to 1,500 specialty seeds soared into the sky, turning into many yakshas, asuras, demons, and ferocious beasts. They densely lined up in the seething, perilous aura behind Rona. If it was said that the young lady had turned into a divine country, then Rona would have turned into the legendary netherworld, and the country of death. This was a killing technique that he had created by combining the mystic abyss Heavenly Emperor's waves and the killing technique that had been passed down in his clan, the Central Heavenly Courts country. The 2 great martial arts borrowed from each other and fused them together. The Netherworld Ghost Country condensed 1,500 demons from endless perilous auras, power, specialty seeds, and ether particles to reside in his body. Once they were released, their prowess could destroy cities and countries. He had once relied on this move to fight against 7 level 29 conferred knights single-handedly and emerged victorious. The moment the 2 of them came out, they activated their heaven's perception and saw Feng Xingjian, whose physical body had become extremely emaciated and his vital energy and blood had deteriorated greatly. Although it was unknown why Feng Xingjian's injuries seemed to have worsened, this did not stop Rona from making his move. With a flash, he appeared before Feng Xingjian, and a stream of black light encompassed Feng Xingjian. The 1,500 Azura demons attacked in unison, and their roars, shouts, and furious howls rang out across the entire sky. Seething black clouds rose up, encompassing a range of several tens of leagues. Densely packed evil spirits and demons stood there, as if the area within a range of 100 leagues had been pulled into the netherworld, and Feng Xingjian was surrounded in the middle. Rona revealed a savage expression. Fang Xingjian, your talent really makes me jealous. Therefore, all the more reason why I can't give you any chance. I can only beat you to death with a single spurt of energy. Having left the Hades vault and losing the endless powers in the space, Rona did not plan on giving Fang Xingjian any chance at all. He attacked at full power, determined to kill Fang Xingjian with all his might. At the next moment, all sorts of flames, lightning bolts, shock waves, sabers, spears, and cudgels struck out toward Fang Xingjian. As seething black clouds seethed, it was as if the gates of hell had opened up and a myriad of evil spirits attacked Fang Xingjian. A myriad of attacks landed on Fang Xingjian's body, and violent flames, heat currents, and smoke covered his body completely. After attacking at full power for 10 minutes and depleting 99% of his energy, Rona believed that no one would be able to take on his attacks head-on. Even if the first prince did not wear the Hell's white bone armor and just took the blows without retaliating, he would definitely be broken after being attacked continuously for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes of full-power attacks, concentrated sounds of explosions mixed together, and the sky was in a state of chaos. When Rona came to a stop, his face was flushed red, and he was panting intensely. He continued to absorb all sorts of ether particle energy, solar energy, and heat energy in the air into his ether organs to recover his energy. However, at the next moment, a light breeze swept away the smoke, dust, and flames, revealing Fang Xingjian. Right now, Fang Xingjian's body was completely bare. It was because all of his clothes and defenses had been turned into dust. However, there were no signs of injuries on his body at all. It was just that compared to how he had looked previously, he was now much thinner and more delicate. He looked just like an ordinary university student, but his skin was extremely fair and tender. He looked just like a newborn baby. How is this possible? He's completely unscathed? Rona looked at this scene in astonishment. At the next moment, waves of natural disasters, impending disasters, and extremely dangerous auras came from Fang Xingjian's body. Rona had just moved his fingers when Fang Xingjian pressed down across space with his palm. With a boom, it was as if Rona had been slapped by a huge, invisible palm. His armor, jade talisman, necklace, and over 10 other divine weapons all exploded, showing how wealthy he was and how many weapons he had. However, even with so many layers of defenses, they were unable to hold on for even 1,000th of a second. After all of them exploded and turned into balls of fireworks, Rona smashed into the ground like a meteor, instantly collapsing a small mountain and causing the ground to seethe like waves. It was as if there was a magnitude 7 earthquake. Chapter 597. The myriad of evil spirits and demons in the surroundings bellowed furiously, wanting to make their move. Fang Xingjian slashed out with his finger sword again, and a stream of sword chi that was several tens of leagues long cut across the sky, slashing down. The dark clouds exploded, and the myriad of evil spirits and demons let out agonizing cries as they were smashed into pieces by the endless sword chis. The series of attacks were casual, yet they easily took care of the young Rona. When the young lady saw this scene, she let out an astonished cry and retreated. Exerting strength from her physical body, she unleashed her specialty seeds, and her physical particles exploded. A majestic power struck out into void space, and she brought along waves of air currents, wanting to escape. This series of explosive attacks could be said to be extremely well-practiced and profound. Such a series of explosive attacks would probably be able to crush 99% of conferred knights, displaying the young lady's solid foundations. Even Fang Xingjian could not help but nod to himself when he saw this. However, it was still meaningless. The young lady had only moved for less than 0.1 seconds when Fang Xingjian raised his finger sword, and several 100 million streams of sword ripples flashed out from void space. Under the sword forces of the infiltrating void, light pursuit, and all-conquering sword intents, streams of sword force pierced through void space. There were hundreds of millions of them, and they were indestructible. The young lady was disintegrated at the physical particle level. Starting from her legs, her body started to shatter and turn into dust. In that instant, she turned into dust, and her martial will was also slashed into dust by the sword forces. Her physical body had collapsed, and there was not a hint of her will left behind. No, Rona, who was covered in blood and suffering from serious injuries, had just dashed out from the ruins when he saw the scene of the young lady being crushed with a single sword attack. He let out a world-shaking howl, appearing like a wild beast that had fallen into a desperate situation. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked at Feng Xingjian with a gaze that was filled with vengeance. It was as if he had an irreconcilable feud with Feng Xingjian. A total of 1,500 specialty seeds had all self-detonated. Then Rona's flesh, blood, and bones all started to burn up. Simultaneously, his martial will also shattered bit by bit. Even the heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces between the physical particles, the powers that maintained his physical structure, were drawn out. The explosion of specialty seeds, the burning of vital energy and blood, the shattering of his will, and even the heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces that maintained his physical structure were drawn out. At this moment, Rona had really gone all out. Feng, Xing, sword, I want you dead. All of his powers were mixed into this single strike, and a pitch-black river erupted from Rona's body. He turned all of his powers into a huge river, just like the legendary river Styx, and swept it toward Feng Xingjian. This attack was the Netherworld Wave's ultimate move. It was just like Feng Xingjian's prodigious astral divine powers Wave's ultimate move, Terra Ingurgitation. According to the legends, the Netherworld River was the path for people to enter the Netherworld after they died. Once this Netherworld River was executed, it would directly send the opponent into the Netherworld, directly absorbing the opponent's martial will and mixing it into the Netherworld River, erasing all memories and consciousness. It was an unparalleled martial art that attacked one's will. However, the Feng Xingjian before him had long since become an existence that surpassed Rona's understanding. After becoming an eternal sword master, Shifeng's basic attributes would increase by 500 points each time he leveled up. In other words, every time he leveled up, all 5 of his major attributes would increase by 100 points. In other words, Feng Xingjian's current attributes had become name, Feng Xingjian age, 19 profession, eternal sword master level, 30 strength, 426 agility, 424 reaction, 329 endurance, 310 flexibility, 309. These attributes were terrifying. However, when compared to the other change that came with attaining the divine level, they were not even worth mentioning. After successfully attaining the divine level, Feng Xingjian's will had completely materialized. This meant that his martial will could directly interfere with the physical world, and his physical strength could be completely turned into the power of his martial will. All of his attacks could be launched out with his martial will. With the explosive power of his original 10,000 specialties and 1.08 billion physical particles, Feng Xingjian's physical strength had been transformed into an all-pervasive martial will that could scan out a range of 100 lis, and a small martial will that could penetrate deep into the microscopic world. Right now, when Feng Xingjian performed sword techniques once again, its prowess was extremely terrifying. Other than these basics, the attributes and the materialization of his martial will brought about by attaining the divine level, the Eternal Sword Seigneur also brought about 3 new abilities. They were Sword Prowess, Sword Force, and Sword Realm. With Sword Prowess, one would be able to comprehend any sword technique just by listening to it once and learn it with just one look. Once all the sword techniques were learned, they would automatically rise up to level 50, and all the sword techniques that one had already learned would also rise up to level 50. With Sword Force, all attacks would automatically bring forth astronomical phenomena and the energy of ether particles. The effects of all attacks will be doubled. This meant that with each sword attack, the energy of ether particles would also be brought forth to attack at the same time, causing the effects of all attacks to be multiplied by 2. Meanwhile, the sword realm contained an even deeper level of profoundness. With an increase of 500 points in his attributes, the transformation of his martial will, the fact that his sword prowess had reached level 50 and the attacks of his sword force had been doubled, Feng Xingjian's battle prowess was now on another level. Faced with the gushing netherworld river, Feng Xingjian transmitted information through his martial will. His voice rang out in Rona's mind as he said calmly, "It's meaningless." At the next moment, sword light flashed in void space, slashing the gushing netherworld river into dust, turning it into a rainstorm that came pouring down. The attack that he had staked his life on had been easily neutralized, and a look of disbelief flashed in Rona's eyes. In the end, it all turned into waves of deep despair. Just as he was about to collapse, he was dragged up by an invisible force and sent before Feng Xingjian. Simultaneously, Feng Xingjian casually pulled, and it was as if the sunlight in the sky had been pulled down by him. With a single slash of his sword, he then draped it over his body, treating it as his clothes, slashing sunlight as his robe. At the sight of this scene, Rona's eyes turned gloomy. "You have succeeded in attaining the divine level." "That's right." Feng Xingjian took a look at his attributes, sensed the terrifying power in his body, and sensed his omnipresent martial will. He said calmly, "Hand over the mystic abyss heavenly emperor's waves, and I can let you die a quick death." Right now, Rona had unleashed all of his powers explosively. All of his specialty seeds had been destroyed, and even the physical structure of his body was unstable. He would die at any moment. Or rather, it could be said that he no longer cared about life and death. He merely looked at Feng Xingjian with a gaze filled with indignation. He had been born in a clan that had the legacy of a divine-level expert and had received the best education and the best cultivation from a young age. Later on, he had even received the legacy of the mystic abyss heavenly emperor. He had thought that he was a lucky person favored by the heavens, and that he would be the main character of history in the future. However, right now, he had been completely defeated by Feng Xingjian. There was no hope at all. Looking at Feng Xingjian, who had attained the divine level, Rona said resentfully, "Feng Xingjian, don't think that you've already won. There are 10 great divine-level experts in the Empire. Do you think that you're invincible just because you've attained the divine level? Moreover, if I die in your hands, my clan won't let you off. The 7 great clans won't let you off either. You better be prepared to be hunted down endlessly." With that, he smiled coldly. "Moreover, you might not be able to escape today." As he spoke, he looked toward the sky several hundred meters away. Feng Xingjian did not look at him. Instead, he lifted his head and also looked toward the sky several hundred meters away. The first prince, who was wearing the Hell's white bone armor, had unknowingly appeared there. Chapter 598. There were 9 Hades ghost dragons circling around the first prince. However, these 9 Hades ghost dragons had shrunk their bodies to over 10 meters long and were circling around the first prince. Clearly, they had been subdued by the first prince. The 9 Hades ghost dragons all had the potential to advance to the divine level, so the first prince's abilities had clearly increased tremendously. However, when he looked at Feng Xingjian, his gaze was still filled with astonishment. It could be said that this was the first time that astonishment had appeared in the first prince's eyes ever since he had arrived at the Hades vault. Even when the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord had appeared, even when Rona had borrowed the powers of the Hades vault, even when Feng Xingjian had snatched the Sunluo 6 Heaven Sword, even when the Hades ghost dragons had appeared, the first prince had remained calm, as if he was in control of the entire situation. However, now that he saw that Feng Xingjian had attained the divine level, he could not help but reveal astonishment in his eyes. "To think that you, Feng Xingjian, have attained the divine level." The first prince lowered his gaze and sighed. "A genius. You're really a genius. It seems I'll have to kill you here today. Otherwise, the country will be in chaos and endless disputes. It won't be a blessing for the world. George, Fang Xingjian looked at the first prince and said slowly, I said that I would kill you. Today, I'll first wipe out this clone of yours and take your hell's white bone armor. As he spoke, Fang Xingjian slashed out with the instant sword, performing it with his deathly sword intent. It instantly turned into several hundred sword marks, covering the hell's white bone armor completely. Under the terrifying sword force seething, the hell's white bone armor trembled slightly. The first prince's gaze narrowed. Even the hell's white bone armor was trembling. How terrifying was such an attack? At the instant Fang Xingjian made his move, the 9 Hades ghost dragons let out furious bellows and once again formed the 6 transmigration formation, encompassing him. Waves of life and death reincarnation, as well as the cycle of all living things, descended from the sky, as if wanting to bring Fang Xingjian into the cycle as well. Fang Xingjian, you dare to steal our Sunluo 6-heaven sword? Now taste the power of us 9 brothers. Facing the 9 spectral dragons who had executed the number 1 defensive formation of the Jade dynasty, Fang Xingjian did not even spare them a glance as he punched out. 9 earthworms dare to be so impudent in front of me? Violent sword force poured out along with Fang Xingjian's punch. It pierced through the void and exploded in the body of the 9-headed spectral dragon. Amidst the splattering of flesh and blood, the array collapsed. Fang Xingjian pointed out a few more times, and the sky was immediately filled with shattered dragon scales and armor. Bastard, you dare to kill them in front of me? The first prince's marshal swept out. With an overturned hell palm and mortal world reversal, he smashed out toward Fang Xingjian. The spiral-shaped space came pressing down, and layers of stacking powers were twisting within it. It was as if even the space was letting out creaking sounds, as if it was going to shatter at the very next moment. The first prince's overturned hell palm and mortal world reversal could be said to be the 2 most ferocious killing techniques that Fang Xingjian had seen so far in battle. It could be said that ever since the first prince had risen to fame, with the help of the overturned hell palm and mortal world reversal, no one had been able to fight against him head-on. Faced with the explosive power of these 2 attacks, ordinary people would either have to dodge or defend with all their might. However, what kind of person was Fang Xingjian? With over 10,000 specialty seeds and 1.08 billion physical particles, he had unleashed all of them. He had attained 5 tiers of perfection and was striving for the divine level. After transitioning into the eternal sword seigneur, how ferocious was the martial he had transformed. Moreover, he still had the terrifying augmentation from sword prowess and sword force. Moreover, he could also use the power of the Heaven's Volition sword intent. After Fang Xingjian's abilities reached level 30 of the divine level, he was finally able to completely grasp the power of the Heaven's Volition sword intent. He no longer needed to deplete any potential when he activated it. Right now, the Deathly Sword intent and the Heaven's Volition sword intent were activated at the same time, and the explosive power unleashed was world-shaking. With a single sword attack, he simultaneously activated Infiltrating Void, Light Pursuit, and All-Conquering. Accompanied by a tap of Fang Xingjian's sword finger, the black sword edge pierced out toward the first prince's attack. The distorted space was smoothed out, and the power of the overturned hell was negated. Amidst rumbling explosions, Fang Xingjian destroyed the mortal world reversal and overturned hell palm's consecutive attacks with a single sword attack. Then he grabbed out with one hand and grabbed onto the neck of a ghost dragon. His 5 fingers were like hooks, each of them activating the 5 god-slaying swords. In an instant, the ghost dragon's tendons were pulled out, and the ghost dragon was skinned alive. He then took a step forward and stomped on another Hades ghost dragon, causing it to explode. Then his left hand tapped out consecutively, and another 3 ghost dragons were slashed into dust. The first prince was completely engulfed by the black sword intent, and the hell's white bone armor trembled crazily under the impact of the sword intent. If it was not because it had the effect of distorting space and fending off attacks, this gush of sword intent would probably be able to pass through void space and kill the first prince's martial will, which was hidden within, even if it did not manage to break through the Hell's white bone armor. The first prince waited until the black sword edge, which had come gushing toward him, disappeared completely. When he saw how Feng Xingjian had killed 4 ghost dragons with a flip of his hand, his countenance changed drastically. He had not expected that Feng Xingjian, who had just attained the divine level, would already be so ferocious. World Annihilation, Heavenly Lord, how much longer are you going to hide for? If we don't join forces to kill him now, it probably won't be long before Feng Xingjian becomes unstoppable. With that, the aura on the first prince's body burned up intensely. He unleashed all the power of his clone's martial will, wanting to kill Feng Xingjian completely. This meant that after this attack, his clone would deplete all of its power and disappear completely. An unprecedentedly massive vortex descended from the sky, and the space distorted to an unprecedented degree. It turned pitch black, just like a black hole in the universe. Any light rays that shot into the spatial distortions of the mortal world reversal would keep on seething to and fro, never to be able to shoot out again. This region of distortions covered a range of over 10 kilometers. Under the pressure of the palm, the mountain peaks and rainforests on the ground started to tremble crazily. Countless birds and wild beasts ran off in all directions, as if the world had reached its final doomsday. Waves of will that could obliterate good and evil and overturn right and wrong gushed out. It was as if they wanted to redefine the entire world's rules and overturned the mortal world. Just as the first prince was about to unleash his full power, a cold laugh rang out from the depths of the sky. The world annihilation Heavenly Lord descended from the sky. This time around, it was not his clone. Instead, it was the world annihilation Heavenly Lord's actual body that had come in the form of a drought demon. The moment he appeared, the temperature within a range of 100 lis continued to rise at a rate of 1 degree Celsius per second. It could be said that after the Worm King had died and his clone had been destroyed, the world annihilation Heavenly Lord had immediately rushed to the entrance of the Hades vault with his actual body, waiting for Feng Xingjian and the others to escape before giving them a full-powered attack. However, all of this was within the first prince's expectations. In fact, the world annihilation Heavenly Lord's main target was the first prince, who was the strongest. However, he had not expected that he had been slightly slower. Feng Xingjian had attained the divine level and displayed an unrivaled battle prowess. Such terrifying potential made even the world annihilation Heavenly Lord's heart palpitate. Therefore, as the first prince's clone attacked at full power, the world annihilation Heavenly Lord also made his move. At this moment, 2 great experts from the orthodox and evil paths, which were unprecedented in history, joined forces to attack Feng Xingjian. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.